a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Thrilled to be with you on this wonderful Monday morning. Got a big show planned for you. We want to remind you that we are going to be here talking with you and that we hope for you to interact with us. In fact, Traven's going to start to show you some of the different ways that you can connect. I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, there's so much to do there. The toy guide is still there, and I encourage you to check it out because there's some amazing toys. I love when you guys have written and said, you know what, I looked at the toy guide, I got that toy, and it was great, and my kid loved it. I'd love pictures of that. If you got a toy now or over the holidays for somebody and it was great, send us a picture. I'd love to see that. That would make my day. Anyway, you can also go through our whole library of videos, which is super fun. Or if you just want a certain genre of our videos, like you really like Jargon of the Day, because you roll that way, then there's the whole playlist that's Jargon of the Day. But if you like the recipes, go to the recipe section because it's super fun. Traven, I'm just thinking, off the cuff here too, we have not shown the January recipes that we did a couple of years ago. We might have to hunt those up. I just the other day was making the meatloaf that we made from our January recipes, and it's a great recipe because you sneak all these carrots and broccoli into the meatloaf and it's yum-alicious. Okay, so anyway, back to this. You can also chat with us directly from the homepage by going to the little chat button at the bottom of our homepage. Click that and it opens up. You can be typing, you hit enter, it shows up here on my screen. It's free, it's anonymous, right? When you're writing to us on Facebook and YouTube, people can see what you wrote. If you want to be anonymous, you don't want people to know it was you who said it, you can do that over at our homepage, autism-live.com. I do like to start on Thursdays to remind you that we have lots of experts who are on the show. I've got a couple of great ones for you today, but remember, I'm not one of them. My credentials to be here, I'm a very proud mother of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. And here's the other thing, I have a lot of karmic debt I need to pay forward. So I care deeply. I'm a former teacher too. I think that sort of qualifies me. I care deeply about what you're going through. And by you, I mean the larger autism community, of course. That's individuals who are on the spectrum. Of course, it's everyone who loves them and cares about them and wants them to be able to do the things that are meaningful for them in their lives. So I want to help all of you to get to the things that are important to you. It's not one size fits all because it can't be. Our community isn't one size fits all. So write to us, tell us what you need, but don't, I'm fond of saying now we just the other day crested the 14-year anniversary of my son being diagnosed with autism, and it's been over a decade that I've been hosting a show in one way or the other about autism and interviewing experts. So, look, do I have an informed opinion? I think so. But it is an opinion. It's not an expertise. So if you want to know my opinion about something, write in and specifically say, Shannon, I want to know what you think or say about this. I'm always happy to share that. But otherwise, we're going to let the experts field it, right? And if there's something you need expert information about, write to me and I'll hunt down an expert in that thing. How's that? Okay, we do like to start Mondays with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are the experts talking about. What does this have to do with me? Do I really have to learn this term? Because I'm here with the learning things, right? Yes, if it helps us to save time, money, and make more progress, then we want to learn it, right? So this term today, reinforcer, is at the crux of all of that. Now, when we do jargon of the day, first we give you the actual definition, and because I enjoy making fun of it, let's be honest. And then we give you a working definition, hopefully so that you can begin to understand how this might work in your life, right? And if you don't get it the first time, don't sweat it, because we go back over these terms. And sometimes I think you have to hear it and then experience it and then hear it again, and you go, oh, I know what that looks like, and I know why that's important, right? So give yourself a little bit of a break if you don't get it right off the bat. So today, reinforcer. This is one of those good old words where we all go, well, I know what a reinforcer is. It's something that enforces something, right? But how does this pertain to autism, and particularly to ABA? So let's take a look at this great definition that we have. Here's the actual definition. A stimulus/event delivered contingent on the exhibition of a behavior, which increases the probability of that behavior continuing to occur or occurring more often in the future. For example, if the child enjoys being tickled, tickles may be used as a potential reinforcer for correct responding or appropriate behavior. Thank goodness for the example, because otherwise we'd be like whistling in the wind in a field somewhere going, huh? What? I love how complicated experts like to make things be. Contingent on the exhibition of a behavior which increases the probability of that behavior continuing to occur or occurring more often in the future. What? Right? Okay, but let's move on. You kind of get it though from the example, right? It begins to make a certain amount of sense, but notice that they qualify and say it's a potential reinforcer. Let's move on to our working definition so that we can get into whys and wherefores here. So a reinforcer is something that acts as a reward for your child or for you, for any individual, and motivates him or her or you to continue engaging in a particular behavior, good or bad. Okay, so basically the reinforcer is the paycheck. It's the thing that it's big enough that it makes you want to continue doing a behavior, good or bad. When you're smoking, you get some sort of a paycheck, right? For some people, it's the sting of the inhale. For other people, it's the social interaction, right? But there is a paycheck, and so you continue to smoke. And then it becomes an addiction, but that's different. So look, if we want to make sure that a behavior continues to happen, then we want to give it a reinforcer that is meaningful. And sometimes, think about yourself. Sometimes you're willing to do something because let's use the example of chocolate cake. You want a piece of chocolate cake. Somebody says, do this. You get the piece of chocolate cake. So you do it. But then sometimes you're like, I've had chocolate cake. I don't want chocolate cake, and it's not enough for me to do it, right? Because we change our mind. So a reinforcer is only a reinforcer if it does make the behavior happen or happen more often. It's more likely to happen, right? Okay, so that means we need to give preference assessments, which when we're asking somebody to do something, ask them what would make it worthwhile. And then you got to try it to see if that's actually really reinforcing. And remember that all of the bad behavior that we do, and I say bad because we all engage in behavior that's not useful or helpful, right? We all do. But all of it is being reinforced in some way. And if you really want to figure out how to change that behavior, figure out what the reinforcement is. Okay, they're telling me I got to hurry this along because we got big guests. So moving on, we always have a question of the day for you. And our question today, I absolutely love. We're not in February yet, but it's never too early to talk about this subject. What is your definition of love? The big love, what is it? This is like an icebreaker for me if I'm talking to people at a party and it's not a business party. Like, I think this is a great question to ask people, what's your definition of love? One of my friends from college, she said that her mom taught her that the definition of love is when you're willing to do whatever to be with that person. As in, if that person is shoveling poo for the day, that you're like, I don't like to shovel poo, but I'm going to go shovel poo because I'm going to do it with you. That was the definition of love. I walked around with that for years, and then I realized that's not, for me, that's not the definition of love. And I think the definition of love is when you feel better when you're with the person as opposed to not being with the person. Like you feel like you're your best self when you're with them, and you want to be your best self with them, and you feel like you are accepted completely and you accept that person. Now, is that possible to maintain, 100% of the time? I don't know. But I certainly, I've been blessed with the love of my life. And I always say to people, the biggest gift that my husband has given me over the years is that he loves me for exactly who I am, not in spite of it. Yes, I talk too much, and he's okay with that. You know what I mean? So that's love. Okay, so then we always have a topic for the week, and our topic this week is that today is enough. So often we get ourselves so much into the future and so much into the past instead of dealing with what is today. And especially if you are an individual on the spectrum or you are taking care of someone who's on the spectrum, I want you to focus on what can I do today? And just ask yourself that question, what can I do today? And you can add things to what can I do today to support my child speaking? What can I do today to reinforce, what's happening with my ABA provider? What can I do today? Because when you put today plus tomorrow plus the next day, if you just do enough of the right things day in, day out, things get better. So, and I know sometimes we're like, but he can't read, right? I remember when my son was 3 and I was like, he's not going to be able to go to college. And people were like, start here. You can't climb this mountain by starting at the top. Start here and walk the path day by day. And my son's going to college in a year and a half. Right? And I'm not ready for that. Let's not go there. But the point is saying, what can I do today? Focus on today. Live your best life today. Do what you got to do today. What action can I take today to set myself up for success? What action today can I set my child up for success? What action today can set up my team for success? And do that today, and then do that tomorrow, and then do that the day after, and it will add up to where you want to go. I'm telling you, it works. All right, we got a big show for you. We got Bonnie Yates, special education attorney, coming up in just a minute. She's going to answer a question about IEPs, and then she's got some really good resources for us. Then a little bit later, we have Paul Worthington, and he is going to be with us from Lindamood Bell. He's the director of the research and development at Lindamood Bell, and he's going to tell us about some really interesting research having to do with language processing and how we can change that equation and how that helps with reading comprehension. Because I know you guys write in and ask a lot about, well, my kid can read, but the comprehension isn't there. And he's got some really interesting research to talk about us with that. So that's what's happening today. Stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Autism Live, to this wonderful segment that we call Your Rights with Bonnie Yates. She's a special education attorney. She is joining us via Skype. Bonnie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. How are you, Shannon?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
We're thrilled to have this opportunity to talk to you and have you answer questions and give us heads up on legal things that we should know about. But first, we want to talk about the wonderful law firm that you work with and what your disclaimer is for being on the show.
Okay, so I work with Toner Law Offices. They're based in San Jose. We now have offices in El Segundo and Irvine as well. If you want a complimentary consultation and you're located in Northern or Southern California, if you go to the website, Toner Law Offices, you can fill in, there's a quick handy dandy sheet to fill in for your consultation. We'll set it up for you. Also, we are asking questions today and we're answering questions today under California law and federal law, but not law in the other 49 states. So if you have another state problem or you have a specific problem, we really suggest you confer with an attorney in your state. And a good list of attorneys can be found at the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates. I don't know all those people personally, but I've met a lot of them at the COPA conference over the years, and I think they're very dedicated practitioners, many of whom have a family member with a disability. why they're doing this.
Yeah, what a wonderful resource.
So we have a question, and then we have a lot of information for people that hopefully will be new and useful.
And I just want to remind people that when you were on the show last week, you kind of threw out a challenge, and we've gotten some response already. But yes, but I want to be fair and equal and even, and remind people that they can be writing to us, that you have partners at the Tollner Law Office, that you've said, people, basically our viewers get to write in and say who they would like to be on the show. So if
that's what you got to do.
So
you got to vote.
So
you got to vote.
Write into me.
Go to the website, look at the attorneys, look at their bios, and see who you want to hear from, and we'll bring them on the show.
Okay, fabulous. So should we start with the question that we had come in?
Let's always start with the question.
Okay, and I thought this was a good question really for everybody. Somebody wrote in and said, what should I be doing now to prepare for my IEP in April? And an April IEP is a little bit late, right? Aren't they mostly February, March, or am I mistaken?
I don't feel like there's any mostly.
Okay.
I feel like they do them up to the wire. The problem would be if you need a follow-up IEP and you're starting so late, it's going to be hard to schedule. If you have a stay put that you want to perpetuate, you are better off having your IEP earlier in case you have to file for due process. The administrators won't be as completely fried as they will be by the time they do the inordinate number of IEPs that they do, which I don't understand how another human being can do 80 or 125 IEP meetings in a year, but they do it. So I think early gives you more time to react. It gives you more time to ask for an outside evaluation at district expense. There's a lot of reasons.
Okay.
So this listener asks how to prepare for her IEP, but she doesn't tell me, is it annual? Is it a triennial? What's the student's eligibility? What are the placement issues? Are there new assessments? Are there specific things you want to discuss with the team? So I'm going to bounce it back to you and ask you, can you please send us a more specific question about what you'd like to get accomplished at your IEP, and a little more information about the background stuff that I just asked you about, and then we can try to answer it on the show the next time.
Can we just briefly, though, address, because you brought up this interesting thing, what the difference is between an annual and a triannual IEP for people who don't know?
Yes. So an annual, the district's legally obligated to meet with you annually to revisit and update your IEP. And then every 3 years, they're supposed to do a full reevaluation, so all new assessments, and look at things really holistically and comprehensively. So if you're having an annual, you might have new assessments, but you wouldn't necessarily have had new assessments. If you're having a tri, actually they changed the law, and you can waive your triennial evaluations, but I don't recommend people do that. I think it's a bad idea. Because if you waive your tri, then when you want to get an IEE, there's no evaluation to disagree with.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it doesn't set you up for success. Let's be honest about that.
yes, it's not a good idea.
Okay.
So
You just had a visitor walk past you, Bonnie.
that's my lovely son,
Well,
who is home from college and
we're waving
moving
to
into
him.
the next phase of his life.
we're waving to him.
So-
It was like, wow, there was like a person who just walked behind. Okay, I just didn't want to leave it unsaid. So
Okay.
you had some.
I was just going to let him be kind of a phantom on the screen.
Ah, wonderful. I was way too curious. Curious minds want to know.
Okay.
So anyway, there were some things that you also wanted to talk about. What's on your
Yeah.
topic today?
Lots of things that I want to talk about. I'm doing shameless plugs for other people, but I'm doing it because I think the stuff they do is so good, and I think it'll be useful to you guys. And I've vetted these people myself over and over and over again, so it's not like I'm just giving you some names. So I had a really exciting meeting with a child advocate who is herself the parent of a child with a disability, and she's been taking on areas that I can't take on because they're not cost effective for me to do so as a lawyer. And the important one is in-home supported services, aka IHSS. So if you have a child at home with a disability and you provide full-time care for that child, if the degree of disability merits it, you can be paid for all the work you are doing for free for your child, which is significant because it may allow you to stay out of the workforce and stay at home and do the things that you can do for your child that you do better than anybody else. You couldn't pay for the kind of job that parents do for free. So this lady's name is Melissa Schomburg Lander, and she gets IHSS for people, and she told me that the maximum amount is $5,000 a month, tax-free, irrespective of other income. So if you want to talk to Melissa about how you might get IHSS for your family, she can be reached at 818-835-2524 or Melissa at Standout Advocates, and advocates is plural, standoutadvocates.com. So that's one really great resource.
And I want to say, Bonnie, I'm so in accord with you. We've had Melissa on the show before. We've had
really?
We love them too. But I do want to let viewers know, because we have people who watch all over the country and in fact all over the world, that the IHS that the amount that you're talking about and the services that you're talking about, we're talking about California.
California law.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. I'm glad you know Melissa too. Okay, next person. I'm sure Shannon knows her too.
Maybe
Karen Fessel, Fessel, from the Autism Health Insurance Project, so Ahip. Karen is a go-to person for a lot of my clients if they are receiving services from a particular insurance company and they want to know how to perpetuate those services. Karen has a very good handle on what the different companies are doing and not doing. So Karen, and she's also very generous with her time. So Karen can be reached at karen@autismhealthinsurance.org. You can look her up, Google her. She's very good. And then if you have an actual appeal that you need to make of an insurance company decision, I'm recommending that you talk to attorney Randy Curry, Curry. He can be reached at 949-258-4381 or Dr. Curry, Curry, at currylawyers.com. And if your request for insurance is denied or the amount you're given is too low, he has over 30 years experience dealing with insurance companies, bad faith failure to pay under a policy of insurance. And he really loves the work, and he's done a lot of work with CARD, including with Doreen Grandpichet. And in fact, the way he met Doreen was at my son Nick's case against Blue Shield. The insurance company took Doreen's deposition, and Randy defended her deposition. So anyway, those are some resources for you that I wanted to mention. Another is SERR. If you put in SERR, Special Education Rights and Responsibilities, into your computer, if you're in California, you can pull up a really good publication that's written for lay people, but it's written in a very intelligent way, and I use it, and I just think it's something that you can have on your computer, and it answers a lot of the questions that you have and that we deal with on the show. So that's Special Education Rights and Responsibilities. So then some other things that have come up. What is the difference between a non-public and a private school in California? Now, under the IDEA, the states have the ability to pay for a private school placement for a student if they want to. and the rules about how they contract with the private school is left up to the individual state. So in California, if you have a placement that's private and you want it written into your IEP, the district can do that, but then what's going to happen is they're either going to have to assist the private school in obtaining non-public school certification, or they're going to have to give the school a temporary waiver of certification so that they can make the private school into a non-public school. Non-public schools have an application process through the California Department of Education where they have to provide certain assurances and fingerprint their staff and TB clear their staff and make sure that they meet minimum state standards for certification, and then they become a non-public school rather than a private school. The reason that's significant in California is if you are non-public, all the rules about discipline, expulsion, and other things apply to you just as if you were in a regular public school, whereas if you're in a purely private school, that's not true. More and more of our families, though, are turning to private schools because the non-public schools are few in number, and they are limited in terms of what they can offer because the districts pay them so little. The districts pay like $125 a day to a non-public school, and that's just not enough money to get the kind of training and qualified staff that you need to work with a person with autism. So that's just a little bit on public and private, non-public and private schools and how they differ. And then we keep hearing about other health impairment on the show and in life, and other health impairment, I've told you, is not an automatic IDEA eligible disability. You have to show, for example, that your ADHD or your asthma or your migraines or whatever the issue is something which causes limited strength, vitality, or alertness, including a heightened alertness to environmental stimuli that results in limited alertness with respect to the educational environment, that is due to a chronic or acute health problem such as asthma, attention deficit, diabetes, epilepsy, a heart condition, hemophilia, lead poisoning, leukemia, nephritis, rheumatic fever, sickle cell anemia, Tourette syndrome, and adversely affects a child's educational performance. So that's section 300.8C9 of the federal regulations, so 34 CFR 300.8. I can send this all to you, Shannon, after the show if you want to put it up. But basically, you've got to show all those things to get eligibility under other health impairment. And that's come up a lot, so I wanted to mention it.
Spectacular.
And then I was thinking, I don't know how much more time we have.
4 more minutes.
4 more minutes. Oh, well, that's good. You know, I was thinking that we should do some reading of the law to give people, sorry about that, give people a sense of what it's like to read the cases and the regulations and figure out what they mean. So I had something I wanted to read you about all of that, but first I wanted to say another issue that's been coming up is who's the responsible district for child find and services if, let's say, a child is removed from public school and put in a private school? And the answer is that really depends, and we can talk about it some more, but I'm going to throw out a few examples. So under 34 CFR 300.131, if you live in one place and your child is going to private school in another, so let's say you live in Los Angeles, but your child is going to a private school in Burbank, question comes up when it's time for an assessment, who is the responsible district to do that assessment? And the answer is you can ask either your home district or the district where your child goes to private school to provide that evaluation. The district of residence is responsible, though, for providing FAPE, not the district where the child is in the private school. But the the private school, if it does an evaluation instead of the home district, can be responsible for funding an IEE. People in private school have something called a services plan as well as an IEP. The services plan says how many or what type of services they're going to get from the public school district that their parents live in. And the answer to the question is a service plan along with an IEP needs to be updated annually. So just because you're in private school doesn't mean you don't have an IEP. Quite the contrary. Homeschool requirements, because I know some of the families that listen to the show are doing homeschool. The federal requirements are at 34 CFR 300.130 through 44, and the lead educational agency for evaluation and reevaluation for homeschooled students is the District of Residence. So that's some stuff about private school students. That becomes a thorny issue in certain circumstances, particularly with homeless children or foster kids that don't have a stable residence. So with that said, Shannon, if you don't have questions, I was going to proceed to read some of the law that we all deal with every day, unless we're out of time.
We've got a little more than a minute. Do you want to take a minute to read something?
No, I'll save it for next week.
Okay.
I think that's better.
I agree with you. I'm all in support.
It'll be more meaningful if it's not.
Let's take that minute then to talk again about the Tollner. Is it Tollner and Associates? I'm never sure about
No,
this.
it's Tollner Law Offices, and you can reach us on the website. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at 310-245-1968. I'd love to hear from you.
Okay,
and that's it.
And to just be specific, though, you're in the Southern California realm, and so if people are needing help in Southern California, they would be calling you directly. If they need help in Northern California, they can call directly to the law firm, correct?
They can call me, they can call up north, it's up to them. There's some very fine lawyers in the San Jose office, and you're going to be meeting them soon.
All right, very excited about that. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, Bonnie.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you, Shannon.
Bye-bye. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, we are going to take a break, and then we are going to come back with Paul Worthington. He is the Director of Research and Development for the Linda Mood Bell Learning Processes. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Autism Live. We're very excited right now because joining us via Skype is Paul Worthington. He is the Director of Research and Development for the Linda Mood Bell Learning Processes. This is a wonderful company. We've actually done an interview before about Linda Mood Bell, but it's been a while. And just the other day on the show, we had two brothers, the Cox brothers, who were on here talking about the amazing things that they're doing in their lives. And we asked them, like, what do you attribute your success? And one of the things that they mentioned was Linda Mood Bell. I love when I go to a conference and whenever there's Linda Mood Bell is there, because my favorite thing on the planet, and I'm holding it up here, Paul, you guys give away these wonderful Post-it note, little notebooks. I never go anywhere without my Linda Mood Bell Post-it notes. So, just a side thing.
There you go. If you need more of them, just let me know.
Oh, you could, like, that's a wonderful gift for me whenever, like, I love them. They're truly wonderful. So Paul, welcome. I don't know that I thought about it before. I didn't realize that there was a research and development portion of Linda Mood Bell, which just makes us like you even more. I think a lot of people just think of it as an educational support that helps their children to learn more and get more out of the education that they get. But the fact that you have research and development is very exciting. Tell us just briefly about, for people who don't know about Linda Mood Bell Learning Processes and your research and development department.
Sure. We developed the R&D department. Now it's been, I'm guessing, close to 25 years ago. The reason being twofold. One, the major issue is, while we've experienced a great deal of success in addressing the needs of kids who have language processing deficits, there's still so much we don't know. And so that was really kind of the impetus behind conducting additional research, because there's always room for improvement in our programs and processes that we've developed and engaged in over the last 30 plus years. The second reason is that from an internal standpoint, we really wanted to take a look at monitoring the fidelity and the ongoing development of programs within our organization. You know, we're now up to over 100 centers around the country, internationally, in both the Atlantic and the Pacific, Australia, England, soon to be Dubai of all places. If we have the research capacity that would allow us to monitor whether or not we're actually improving on the processes, that's an important consideration. So internally, I do research on the work that we do across the corporation within the various sectors, and the work that we do with schools, and the work that we do in our Lindenwood Bell Academy, which is basically our internal schooling operation. If we're working internationally, for example, in Honduras, we're doing some work down there. What's that look like as compared to what we do in our centers? We're working in schools. And so that was the second reason. Back to the first reason, which was that forced us to engage in collaborations with research universities, especially now that the neuroscience of being able to understand what's physiologically going on in the human brain. That technology is so robust, that gave us a new way to validate whether or not we're actually increasing those areas, the functionality of those areas in the brain that are predictably related to good language processing and cognitive skills.
Well, and just to clarify, Lindenwood Bell learning process, do you guys say it processes or processes?
Processes, yeah.
Processes.
Either's fine.
Okay. So, but this is not something that is just for individuals on the autism spectrum, but you guys have an entire division that specializes in folks on the autism spectrum. Is that correct?
It's not a division specifically. It is within a division on our Learning Center operations, but it crosses over. I mean, we wind up in our school contracts where we're training teachers out in public education, for example. They're using the same programs, only applying it to kids on the spectrum who are within public education.
Got it.
In my division, where we're working on the research side, we collaborate with universities to conduct studies to look at the approaches that we recommend where it applies to addressing the needs of children who have autism. And clearly in all of our centers, I mean, kids come in who are on the autism spectrum. So we have to cross-train a whole lot of people in order to meet the needs of kids who are on the spectrum.
Okay, wonderful. Now, you mentioned language processing deficits on the autism spectrum. And I think a lot of parents are probably like, wait a second, because they're used to just talking about language deficits, but I don't think the average parent necessarily thinks of it as a processing. And so it's probably, for some parents hearing that, it might be an exciting thing to hear that, oh, wait a minute, there's a process there, and maybe if we rectify some things that there will be benefits. So in terms of when you guys are working with individuals, how prevalent is this having a language processing deficit?
Sure. We got involved in this largely as a result of some collaborative work that we had done at a kind of a superficial level with Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh back in Pennsylvania. And one of the interesting phenomena, which we agreed with, having seen a number of kids on the spectrum, is that what they call the comorbidity is not a very friendly word, but all that means in clinical terms is how many kids on the spectrum also have very specific deficits on the language processing side. In other words, in those areas, for example, in reading, specifically within reading, one of the primary deficits that jumps up around 50% of the time, depending on who it is that you're reading in the research community, is children on the autism spectrum will have very severe, moderate to severe difficulties in understanding or comprehending what they read and or hear. And that's kind of counterintuitive because so frequently kids on the spectrum, you can take a 5th grade child and give him a college textbook and he can decode the print on the page, but he can't get anywhere near understanding what it is that he reads. And so we have a program that specifically addresses language comprehension. And that awareness ultimately led to a collaboration with the University of Alabama in Birmingham with Rajesh Khanna and his colleagues as part of a federal grant to take a look at the specific interventions that we had developed to address language comprehension, only specifically do a controlled randomized experiment in working with kids on the spectrum to see not only could we improve their language comprehension from a reading behavioral standpoint, but what happens when you do pre and post analysis looking at the functional connectivity or those areas of the brain that are classically associated with being able to comprehend what you read. And so that led to about 3 or 4 years of detailed work seeing what kind of effect we could have in or working with children who in fact did have these diagnosed difficulties.
Wonderful. And so you brought up the magic word that so many autism parents want more information about, comprehension, and some of the different things that you guys are doing to build comprehension. What I'm curious, because you work in the research end of things, what do you see happening? What is research showing you happens in the brain that then changes the equation? Does that make sense, my question?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Indeed, it was a bit of a revelation because we've always thought, traditionally, I should say, both in the neuroscience community as well as in the educational communities, we've always thought, well, there must be an area of the brain that's somehow not functioning the way that it should. And the counterintuitive part of it for kids on the spectrum or individuals who have autism was that they're so frequently extensively gifted in some areas. Why would it be that, and especially in the area of reading, why would it be that they can read so well, but they cannot translate the print in such a way that once they decode it, then they're getting meaning from whatever it is that they read, or for that matter, whatever they were listening to. Well, one of the findings from this study was, and it was a hypothesis when we went into this study, was that there was a idea that was developed again in Pennsylvania that what they saw in the neurological image of children on the spectrum was that those areas that are involved in cognition or thinking, or specifically where language is concerned, comprehension, what they saw was that there wasn't the connectivity and the white matter in the brain, those areas of the brain that allow for the axons, the dendrites, and so forth, that communicate from one area to the other, were not showing up as efficacious or as fluent as it would in, let's say, normal subjects who have normal comprehension. So we went into these studies, and it's referred to as the underconnectivity hypothesis. The hypothesis being is that children cannot connect from the language area of the brain to those areas of the brain where you translate language, for example, into basic images where mental imagery is concerned, then sure enough, that would, in a negative way, affect how well they comprehend what they read and hear. So we went into this. We went into this study.
Do you need to pause because you got a guest for just?
Yeah.
It's so okay.
Sorry.
Come back to me, Traven, so that he can deal with his guest, and we can go ahead and take him off for a second because he's got things going on. And I want to point out to everybody that we're almost done here in the interview. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. So that's all right. It happens to the best of us, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, you were saying.
What I was saying was that, so we went into the study thinking, well, that matches what we see with children, and we have a theoretical construct on this, that the program that we developed, that Nancy Bell developed, the Bell part of Linda Mood Bell, was back as far as 1986, 87, was that from a student observation standpoint, when you see it, we get these students who come in, they can read fine, but when you ask them to give you some idea that they understood what it was that they read, they can't tell you. And it became apparent, one of the things that Nancy discovered was that it turns out that it didn't appear that they were taking that language in and where they were creating mental representations. Like, you know, it goes along with the old cliche, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right.
Well, if you take 1,000 words, how effectively can you translate that? And it turns out that within the cognitive sciences, there was a prominent cognitive scientist up in Canada. His name was Alan Pavio. He developed a theory called dual coding theory. And the simple version of that is that when you try to understand anything, if you're listening to somebody, or for example, if you're reading a book, you translate that into mental images. And the efficiency with which you're able to do that actually correlates very highly with how well you understand what you read. And so Nancy developed a program called Visualizing and Verbalizing. What we did is we took that program, used it with our kids on the spectrum at the University of Alabama as compared to control subjects who did not go through the intervention. And sure enough, we found a validation of this underconnectivity hypothesis, because after the intervention, the fMRIs, and more specifically the technology that's used in brain scans called diffuser tensor imaging, did show, in fact, that we increased the conductivity, or the white matter in the human brain, where those areas of the brain where language is taken in, we're communicating more effectively with those areas of the brain where we create mental representations, for example, in the hippocampus and back in the occipital lobe. And so it was a eureka finding for us to have that validated. We presupposed that that was the case, but we had no way to prove it.
Yeah.
So sure enough, kids on the spectrum do tend to have this underconnectivity, and it disallows, or it inhibits their ability to get meaning from what they read and hear.
So just to be clear, you know, these interventions work. You have proof that they work, and it's proof that it shows up on an MRI.
Right.
So that's pretty impressive. So we're just about out of time, but so for our viewers watching who are like, okay, well, where do I go to get this, and what do I walk over to the Linda Mood Bell place, and what do I say so that I can get these services for my kiddo?
Basically, it's just, all it takes is a phone call, and we're all over the web to look us up. Contact one of our centers. If you call our main offices here in San Luis Obispo, California, we can easily switch you to a location that's nearest you. I might mention in passing also that the results of the study, those studies of 4 papers have been produced, and those are referentially offered on our website. But the findings from that, we got together with the University of Alabama and wrote another grant. They funded another 5 years of study for us to dig even deeper into these phenomena. And so we're actually looking and recruiting subjects right now from across the United States to be involved in the study. And we can point you directly to the folks in Alabama if there are families that would be interested in having their children participate in the study.
Do they need to be in the Alabama area? Where do they need to be? Okay.
No, we're in the United States.
Okay. All right. So what is the website that they need to go to?
It's lindamoodbell.com. That's straightforward, 1-800-233-1819. And we can direct you to the correct clinical locations, and or answer any questions. And folks feel free to call me if they have specific questions about the research that we've been involved in or that we're currently involved in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
No worries.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot.
You take care.
Yeah, cheers.
All right. You guys, we are totally out of time. And so I'm just going to remind you that this week on Tuesday, we have a best of episode. On Wednesday, we are going to have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. She is going to be here with us. I'm told that it's she's going to be here with us. So don't forget that. And I'm going to let you know who's going to be on Thursday because I don't know that yet. And on Friday, Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy and my good pal Nancy Allspaw Jackson back with us. So all of that and more coming up this week. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm super excited about today's show because we've got a really incredible guest that I can't wait to introduce you guys to. But first, we want to let you know that we're here for the next hour live and we want to hear from you. We want to talk with you. We want you to participate with us. So Traven has already started showing you some of the different ways that you can connect with us. While he shows you the myriads of ways that you can watch the show and have your comment read on the show or answered, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com, and when you go there, there's lots of things to do. But let me just point out a couple of quick things. There's a whole library of videos, and you can search them in lots of different ways because some people like to search by topic, some people like to search by a person. So there's lots of different ways that it's separated for you, or you can just go to the search bar and type in keywords, and it should direct you to where you want to go. If you want to go to the Ask Dr. Doreen clips and search topics there, at the top of the page, there's a search by topic, and it's a drop-down menu. And if you click the one for Ask Dr. Doreen, there's one coming for the Temple Grandin videos. But you can go in and you can push toilet training, for instance, and then it will show you all of the times that Dr. Granpeesheh has answered questions about toilet training, and they'll show you exactly what the question was, right? Because if you're trying to toilet train a 3-year-old, that's a vastly different proposition than a 16-year-old who is throwing their poo, right? But both of those questions are going to be in there. So feel free to look at those as well. And by the way, there's a chat button at the bottom of the page. It's a little red button. If you click it, chat, and it opens up a box, and you can type and hit enter, and that shows up on my screen, and you and I can have a conversation. But better than that, you can have a conversation with our guests. Our guest today is somebody that I think you're going to want to talk to. So that's all free. It's all anonymous. You can also be writing it on Facebook and YouTube and Periscope. I'm forgetting something. Twitter. And you can write me at s.penrod@autism-live.com. Whatever way works best for you. And hey, if none of those ways are really your particular MO of how you want to comment, please write and let us know. We're trying to be on more screens. You guys wrote to us and said, why aren't you on iHeartRadio? And we were like, well, I don't know. Why aren't we on iHeartRadio? And now we are. So there we go. And by the way, when you watch us on iTunes, you can listen to us too. You have a choice when you download if you want to do the audio or do the full picture. You can, because you can take us in the car, you can take us on a walk. We try to be a friendly show, and when we put things on the screen, let you know as much as we can what the things are on the screen. Obviously, we can't do that with everything, but we try. So anyway, thrilled to be here this morning. You know, on Thursdays, I like to remind you that we have lots of experts that are on the show. I'm not one of them. Let's be abundantly clear. I'm not an expert in autism. I'm not even an expert in my very own kid. But I do have a kiddo who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and he is fantabulous. He's the most amazing person on the face of the planet. I will tell you that when he was diagnosed with autism, we were told it's a lifelong disability was the word that was said to me. And I think that for some people that may be very true. Because my son got really good services, I still, you know, my son's brain works differently than my brain. His brain works better. Let's be 100% clear, right? But I look at my son and I there's no way that I can see a disability anymore. I don't. There certainly was a time when I saw that there were things that he wanted to do that he could not do, and things that he was frustrated with. Why isn't this working out for me? Because he didn't know that there was something that he wasn't able to do, right? He totally was missing the cue for it. And through good therapy, I will say, through the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, he doesn't have any of that anymore. He knows, if he doesn't know how to do something, he knows how to go look it up and find it and practice it to get better at it. Like, you know, like you do, right? He doesn't have a disability. There's no way you could convince me of that. But it was a lot of work. Let's be honest, it was a lot of work. We got a lot of help and support. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders, I always say they saved our lives. They saved his life, because before them, all he wanted to do was run out into traffic. And now all he wants to do is build things on his, and print things on his 3D printer, and design things on his 3D printer, and write scripts and shoot movies and be with his friends, and a lot, right? So there we have it. Okay. But in any case, I'm not an expert. I'm a mom, and I want to help you to get to the resources that you want to get to, because we got lucky, and I want you to get lucky in whatever way that looks like for you. So write to me, tell me what you're looking for, and I'll do my best. You know, I can only do my best. I can't promise to you that that I can. I certainly don't know everything, but I look for people who do know everything whenever we can find them. All right? Sound like a good deal? You know what I always say here? We can do this together, right? We hold hands. Si se puede, right? Okay. So, Thursdays, we like to start off with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about. I'm very much in a RuPaul mood. You'll understand why later. Okay, so we give you the actual definition of the term. Sometimes I like to make fun of it when appropriate, which is most of the time. And then we give you a working definition, which is meant to help you to sort of find your entree into understanding. Don't, get all upset if you don't get it the first time. I don't think any of us get it the first time, but that's why we cycle back through some of these terms. One of our staff said to me today, "Are you sure you want to do FAPE? You just did it last July." And I was like, "Oh yeah. If it's been since last July, we need to do it again." So there it is. There's our term for the day, FAPE, F-A-P-E, FAPE. What is it? Let's take a look at our actual definition. FAPE stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. It's a term frequently referred to in IEPs. It's the thing you're entitled to. So let's take a look at what, and there's not much to be made fun of there, right? Because this is serious business, and we just stepped into IEP season. And it's a little bit like sometimes stepping into something that's not good on your shoe, right? But it doesn't have to be that way if we understand what the rules are. So let's take a look at what our working definition for FAPE is. It's what your child is legally entitled to in the United States. So again, it's free, appropriate public education. So IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, says that every single person, every single child in the United States is entitled to a free, appropriate public education. Okay, so when you go in with your child, if they could be a child who has cerebral palsy, they could be a child who's blind, they could be a child who has a hearing loss, it could be a child with autism, right? And they are coming in, and we've identified them as someone who has a designated, what they call disability, right? Sometimes I even struggle with that, right? But that's what they call it. They come in and they're identified as being eligible for special education. And when you are eligible for special education, it means that you have the right to be assessed for an IEP. More and more we're hearing from people who say, "Oh, they said that we don't need an IEP." We'll have Bonnie on Monday talking about this kind of thing. More often than not, you do qualify for an IEP. You just have to demonstrate that the child needs some educational support. Now, if the person has whip smart IQ and they're getting straight A's across the board and they have no problem turning in their work, sometimes it makes for a difficult case to say this child needs an education plan. But the truth is that child may very well need an education plan, because if they are not good, if they have an autism diagnosis and their problem is being able to talk to peers and collaborate with peers and have it go successfully, then they still need educational support. And a lot of times school will argue, oh, that's a 504. Well, you know, if you feel like that's okay, fine. But otherwise, let's fight for the IEP, because the IEP provides services. 504 provides accommodations, and really the IEP provides both, right? But here's the problem. You get into the meeting and at some point, the school is going to offer you their version of FAPE. They have to. That's what an IEP is. They offer you, here's what we think FAPE is for your child, because it has to be a free, appropriate public education. Notice that appropriate is really the word here, because we all understand what free means, right? Public means you're not going to pay for it. And education, all right, look, that could be a little dicey too, but it's the appropriate that is where we're really going to argue. And this is hard for autism parents because, look, you know, we all want what's best for our child. Of course. Like, that's not even a question, right? You want what's best for your child. But when you go into an IEP, if you start arguing best, they know that you're not up on what's happening here, because you don't get to say my child deserves what's best and so you're going to give it to us, because the law doesn't support that. The law says they need to give your child what's appropriate. So that's going to be the word that we're going to argue over how we define that. Now, the first IEP that I had to go to as a parent of an individual on the spectrum, I went dictionary shopping until I found the one that defined appropriate as being effective. And I went in with that blown up on a card and said appropriate, and it, you know, had the whole thing so it looked like it was fresh from the dictionary, and I had the quote, you know, so they could see where I got it. And I said, you know, appropriate equals effective. So show me what you're going to do that's going to be effective for teaching my child. And that's where we were off to the races, right? And then they sued me. That's a whole other Oprah we're not going to get into today. But they did. They filed due process against us. That was only the first time they did that. They did that twice. I'm the only person I know that a school district, same school district, has filed due process against our family, not once, twice. But you know what? In the end, we worked it all out. We never actually went to court. I'm not allowed to talk about things, but it all worked out, right? So my point here is, it's what you're entitled to. It doesn't mean they're just going to hand it over to you. Sometimes you got to fight tooth and nail for it, right? And you got to show them that you mean business and that you know what you're talking about. So that's why we have Bonnie Yates here on Mondays to answer your questions and to help you to figure out what to do and where to go next when it's special education law. But there are laws, and our kids have a right. In fact, the Supreme Court 2 years ago, very important landmark case that said that appropriate could not be just de minimis, which is Latin for the minimum. So there have been a lot of schools who have said, well, you know, the kid is here. We have a desk for them. We put worksheets in front of them. We really can't be expected to teach someone who's difficult to teach. That's really been the attitude at some schools. And the Supreme Court said, that's not appropriate. De minimis is not appropriate. And I don't know if they looked at their dictionary and saw that it means effective, right? But we need to fight for FAPE, and we need to define what that appropriate is and help the school to define what the appropriate is for our kids, because it's an entire year of your child's life. And I have seen when my son has gone to school in a year when we were all, when the IEP was right and the FAPE was right and he made progress, right? And there have been years when we didn't get it right, and it was not just straight across, and your kid's self-esteem can be damaged. So it's important that we get this right. And you have the right, your child has the right to FAPE. Don't forget it, free, appropriate public education. And one little trick that a lot of us use in an IEP is that we go in and we just say appropriate 38 times. And they'll say, well, you know, we want for Johnny to do X, Y, and Z. And we go, oh, and how did you determine that that was what was appropriate? And they go, right? They have to start rifling through their papers to have that line up with an assessment that they may or may not have done. Why is it appropriate? You're saying it's appropriate. What are you basing that on, right? Use the word all the time, appropriate, with the school, and they go, oh, okay. This is a parent who knows which way up. The minute you say, well, I want what's best for him, they know they got you, right? Okay, moving on. We always have a question of the day, and our question today, for you, which goes hand in hand with our phrase for the day. What changes would you like to see for educating individuals with ASD? You know, a little over a week ago, I came in, we had all the position papers from all of the candidates who had at that point, I don't know if Bloomberg has turned in one yet. He hadn't 2 weeks ago. But I went through all of the other position papers on disabilities for all of the other Democratic candidates that are still sort of in it. And Yang was still in it at that point. And first we compared, you know, like volume, and then we compared a couple of different things. One of the things that I look for all the time, that since IDA was instituted, and we said this is going to be the law of the land and this is what we're going to judge things by, it has never been fully funded. Nobody has ever fully funded it. Can you imagine? That's, you know, it's like saying, well, we're going to build a house and we gave up our other house and we're now living in this house, but we didn't budget a roof. So we're not going to have one, but we're going to live in the house and we're going to slug it out and hope that everybody can find a dry corner when it's raining, right? Not a good plan. So I looked to see what everybody's plan was for fully funding IDA, but what they also were talking about doing for employment and education and all these other things for disabilities. But here's one of the big questions, right? What changes would you like to see in the education system in educating individuals with ASD? And then I would encourage you to look at the candidates and see, is there a candidate who believes what you believe for education? There's some very interesting things in those documents. Senator Warren has the longest section on education because she's a former teacher, but everybody has something in theirs, right? So check that. They're all online. You can check them out. Some are longer than others, and some of them are more interesting than others. Okay, but what would you like to see? I think that it's important that we, in order, you know what Dr. Phil says, in order to claim it, you got to name it, right? What do you want in the education system? I want to see things and money put in place to teach teachers and staff how to do inclusion well, because we all know that good inclusion is the ticket, right? But very few people know how to do good inclusion. And I will say that there are things in Senator Sanders' plan that address inclusion. There are things in pretty much everybody's that address inclusion. The only person who's incredibly specific about it in their plan is Mayor Buttigieg. He gets very specific about what goals he wants to get to by 2025. Everybody else is a little bit less specific, although Senator Sanders says the measures that he will take immediately by executive action, whereas in Buttigieg's, he does not say how he's going to get there. He just says, this is where I want to get to. Interesting, right? Okay, so check that out, but write into us and tell us what you want to see. All right, moving on. We always have a topic of the week, and I think this topic is so important. It's repairing a conversation. So often when any of us are having a conversation and we're talking, somehow we get off. Like maybe something was misunderstood, maybe the conversation got interrupted and then jumped back in and somebody didn't get to finish a thought. That happened to me the other day with sort of disastrous results. And I had to go back and repair the conversation. And it was like horrible because a misunderstanding had arisen simply because I was saying a thought, didn't get to the end of the thought, and somebody else came in the room. And then when we started, I had, you ever that feeling you're like, something didn't go right. And then I realized later, I was like, I know what it is. I didn't get to finish that thought, and I'm not happy with how that ended. And went back and talked to the person. Man, am I glad I repaired the conversation, because they had taken it the complete opposite of how I meant it, because I didn't get the end of the sentence in, you see? It's important for all of us to know how to repair a conversation. I love that in skills, they have specific lessons in the social language I can't talk today. In the social language curriculum, it's kind of a mouthful, about conversation, starting a conversation, maintaining a conversation, repairing a conversation, and ending a conversation. And they're kind of brilliant. And for those of you who are watching that have trouble with this kind of thing, whether you're on the spectrum or you're not on the spectrum, I would tell you, I learned so much just by reading through those lessons and going, oh, here's the part that I never thought of before. Here's the part that I was missing. And you go, oh, and then you can go try it out, and it actually gets better. Because repairing a conversation is a pretty important skill to have. All right. So we've got a great show for you today. I'm very excited because if you are not watching the new hit show, Everything Is Going to Be Okay, you're missing it. This is on Freeform, so you're going to have to go to your TV guide to see what channel that is on your cable channel or on your satellite dish. But I had never been on this channel before, and now I'm going to check out the other things on the channel, but this show is what got me to that channel. This is an important show, and I'm going to say that, it's possible that maybe it's very cutting edge, and it might be too cutting edge for some people, although I would be bummed for you if it was too cutting edge for you, because it's hilarious, it's thoughtful, it's thought-provoking, it's so well written, tender, and features a cast of characters. One person who is very, more than one person, several people on the show are very specifically identified as being on the autism spectrum. And some of those actors, I believe actually maybe all of them, we'll check, are actually on the autism spectrum. We have one of those actors here with us today. Lillian Carrier is going to be here, and she's brought a very special, I would say, friend. And you'll see when we come back. You're not going to want to miss this. I'm so excited. So stick with us. We're going to be back with Lillian after these messages. Okay. Welcome back. We're so excited, and there's been lots of hubbub in the break because we have welcomed to the studio a wonderful young actress and entrepreneur, I guess, Lillian Carrier, and she is here with her wonderful service dog. This is Luke that she's here with. And so we did a little different configuration in our studio to try to make it comfortable for Luke. Of course, it's a very weird space for a dog, and Luke is a big dog.
He's a very big dog, yes.
So at some point he may want to, get on the floor. We'll see. But it was great fun to watch you guys come in here and you talk to him and get him up on the couch, and super duper fun. Of course, what they say about children and dogs, it's like everybody focuses on the dog, right? So, but I'm here to talk to you, but sometimes to talk about Luke. So Luke is just so enticing. He's just absolutely beautiful. But Lillian is a wonderful actress. If you are not watching Everything's Gonna Be Okay. Now, I always mess up the title of it, but it's Everything's Gonna Be Okay.
Yes.
Because sometimes I say everyone's gonna be okay, or, I don't know, I just mess it up, but it's Everything's Gonna Be Okay. Wonderful new hit show that's on Freeform. Freeform is a cable channel that it used to be Disney Family, then it changed to Freeform Disney, now it's just Freeform, and their like buzz thing is that it's just slightly leaning forward or something like that. It's shows with an edge. I think it's a little bit cutting edge, and this show is cutting edge. And so Lillian plays the character Drea,
Yeah.
on the show, who's a good friend of Matilda's. But you also have another role on the show. Tell us what else you do besides playing Drea.
I was brought on as a consultant on the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what exactly do you consult about?
Autism, specifically,
Yeah.
yes, and service dogs.
Wonderful. So, tell us a little bit about you as an actress, and then we'll talk about when you auditioned for the show. When did you start acting?
So, like, I've always done youth theater, but this was, like, my first real, like, professional acting anything.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a pretty big first, I gotta say.
Yeah, it was a huge first. Like, I went in thinking, like, there was nothing. I was just like, I'm gonna audition, it's gonna be fine. Just a fun thing to do. And then
Did you already have an agent, or did you go in without an agent?
No, I was not pursuing acting as a career. I just thought, I saw that they were auditioning autistic people for the role, and it was more like, I want to meet these people. I want to find out what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I went in for the audition for that purpose and to have fun with it, right? I was like, I did youth theater. This could be
Yeah.
a thing, and yeah, it led.
It was very brave and bold. I'm sure a
Yeah.
lot of people looked at. First of all, where did you see it posted, or how did you find out about it? That they were looking for individuals on the spectrum.
My job coach, who was helping me figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, just came across it because she works with a lot of autism people, and they reach out with any opportunities. And she said you should. She basically talked me into it because when she first presented it to me, I was absolutely against it. And then she was like, "This is just go for the experience. You'll meet people. It's good executive functioning practice, and I think you'll just enjoy it."
I love that.
Yeah.
Are you glad that they talked you into it?
Oh, I'm so glad. Like, it's been such a wonderful experience. Everyone there was like so sweet and so nice.
Love it.
And I think this show has done a great job of presenting autism in such a nice way, and to start conversations about like what all that stuff in that show means.
Yeah.
And
Crazy good. So you went to the audition, but you took Luke with you because he goes with you everywhere, right?
yeah. So to clarify, the audition was actually for Matilda in the pilot when I first auditioned. And yeah, when I went in and I met Josh Thomas.
Who is brilliant.
So brilliant, so nice, and like I really feel like he nailed the voice of autism so well, and he truly understands us. I went in and met him, and he saw Luke, and I absolutely fell in love with him. And then he was I saw him looking at him, and then he just looked at me and he was like, "Autistic people can have service dogs?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's the thing, obviously I have." And I explained to him a little bit about what they do and what he does for me. And he thought that was really interesting, and he said, "I can see Matilda having a service dog." And I was like, "Oh, that would be really cool. Like, we'd have to talk about how well he gets on with Luke." And he's like, No. Luke would be Matilda's service dog." And I was like, "Oh, well, we could try that out. He's never done that. Like, he's not trained for that."
Yeah.
And then when I didn't end up getting the part, he gave me a call and was like, "I don't want you to freak out. Like, I know you're a little upset, but if this goes to series, I'm writing you a part in the show." And that's how Drea came to be, and Duke as well.
And so he's called Duke on the
He's
show.
Duke on the show, yes. Because in the pilot, there's already established character named Luke,
Got it.
who is
Got it.
Matilda's crush. So it would just be confusing to have two.
I didn't think about
Lukes.
that.
Yeah.
Of course, that makes
So-
total sense. But I mean, I love that story that you went for the audition,
Yeah.
and of course brought your dog because that's what you
Yeah,
do.
he goes everywhere with
And
me.
that you got cast and he got cast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best story ever, and a fun role too.
Such a fun role.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so excited, and like a lot of the autism side of it was based off of me as a person because it was written for me. So it was really cool to be able to just feel free and be able to let those things go and not have to, hide all of those things in this character, right?
I love it. I love it. And so there's lots of different times when we see the interactions with Matilda and her friends, and in particular with you. And, you know, you play a very pivotal role in terms of, you know, talking with her and being her confidant for a lot of different things. And there's some stuff, like, people need to be watching this. And if you've missed, because the show debuted in January, so you've missed several episodes, but it's a half-hour show. You can get caught up really quickly. I know I was behind 2 weeks and I wanted to watch before you came in, and I went and watched it on Hulu. You can do that. But it plays on Thursday nights at 8:30, if I'm not mistaken, on Freeform.
So the 7th episode will be on tonight.
That's right. And I love that all of the episodes are named after bugs and spiders, because Josh Thomas's character is a entomologist on the show. And so there's that running theme through it, which I absolutely love. And I have theories about things, and I've had theories about things. But anyway, they're like the topics that you guys cover on that show. Whoo, you don't kid around.
They're big ones, yeah.
Whoo,
And
big.
they're very important ones that I feel like should be talked about more, that for some reason are taboo to touch. But he brings it out in such a comedic, fun way
Yeah.
that also is heart-touching. And I feel like he makes those topics approachable, that you can watch that episode and then afterwards sit down with someone you love
And discuss.
and discuss it.
And the stuff that I mean, there is nothing off the table. I mean, the first time that I saw it, and I, because I got to meet you, at AutFest, they debuted it for the autism community, just the first episode. And so they sent it to me ahead of time, because I was going to be the moderator for the panel. And I, you know, it gets sent to you from Disney, and I expected to see something very Disney, right? And I started watching, I was like, this is Disney? Disney got all hip and cool and edgy, like edgy. We're not kidding around, edgy.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my husband about it then, and then he was watching an episode with me a couple of weeks ago, and he went, wait a second, this is Disney? I mean, and to the point where one of the questions that I had, because with Matilda, with her storyline, and I don't want to give anything away, you guys need to go watch it, but she says, I'm budding sexually and I want to have a sexual experience, and she goes about that in a way, and then we see some things that come to fruition, and I was like, what was it like being on, because the girl who's playing Matilda also identifies herself as being on the spectrum, and I was like, I want to know how this was dealt with on the set and how you guys make everything comfortable. Your character had a kiss with somebody, yes? And you're the consultant. Like, what was that like on the set?
So there was a lot of prior stuff that I sat down with Josh Thomas and talked about sensory stuff, which was a big thing for me specifically. I'm hyposensitive to touch, so I had to explain exactly how I like to be touched, what would cause a sensory overload and all that stuff, which also helped him create those characters.
Yeah.
And that is put into my characters specifically, that we went down to costuming to make it more comfortable for me. That if you notice from day one, Drea wears a compression shirt, which was for me as a person. I talked about how with my hyposensitivity, compression is really helpful in keeping me grounded and calm, and we discussed whether we wanted to hide that from the audience or show it, and we decided like this is a show about people with autism. Let's show it. So under every single outfit she wears, she has a compression shirt on. And
I guess I didn't realize that's what it was.
Yeah.
I thought that was just her style, but I wasn't thinking about it, that's what that is. Interesting.
And then, we definitely, anytime there was intimacy or touching between the characters, I would discuss it with both the director and the other actors. And there was lots of discussion beforehand, and the other actors were very comfortable with saying the same things of what their needs were and talking with me and the directors and each other.
Which honestly is how it should be with everyone.
Yeah. I think definitely the other actors would say things like, I'm uncomfortable if you touch me here. Just like, there was always, everyone has those needs. So to just being able to vocalize and share that. And then, of course, anytime you got overwhelmed, 5-minute breaks were allowed. I definitely had a few times that I stepped out of the scene, because you see that scene, it's 3 seconds, but we, did it 5 to 6 times. That specific kiss or intimate moment, whatever it was.
Yes.
So.
Yes. We don't want to give too much away, but you should be watching it.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the things that I love about the show is that, normally when you're watching television and they sort of reveal something and you go, okay, well, that's going to have an arc of like 3 or 4 shows. And that's not the way Josh writes. It happens either in that moment or the next scene. There is no waiting until the next episode.
Yeah.
Stuff happens. He just like rockets through storylines and you find yourself going, whoo, and making noises. I literally make noises. I'm like, oh my goodness, and clutching the couch and doing things. It's exciting.
It's so exciting. It's so fast paced, and I feel like it's one of those shows that you can watch 6 times and get something new out of it every time, and different laugh points where you're laughing at something new each time that you didn't notice before. So many characters, so many things, and especially rewatching, you'll see characters pop up that had big moments later you didn't notice before.
Yes. I could see that.
Yeah, because you'll see characters that have big episodes later in the season that have been there from the beginning.
Yeah. It's so fascinating, and I got to be honest, because Josh is for you guys who don't know, we got to have him come on the show. He said he would. He's hilarious. He's an Australian comic, and he's done other shows, but I think this is his first big American show.
Yeah.
And he's writing it, and he's starring in it, and he's very involved in every aspect of it, and he is hilariously irreverent. Like, he says the things that people go, he didn't just say that, did he? And I guess he's like, because I got to spend time with you guys that day, and he seems to be that way in real life too. He's got a very interesting take on the world, and I just appreciate that he could have done a show about anything, but he decided the premise of the show, you guys, is that it's this half-brother from Australia who comes to visit, and he's got these 2 stepsisters, and he ends up, teenage stepsisters, he ends up having to really be their caregiver, and one of them is on the spectrum. That about encapsulates it, right? But hilarious and poignant. There's that old thing about I laughed, I cried. You really do. Every episode you laugh and you cry. Every single episode. And every single episode, there's something that takes my breath away. Just takes my breath away. See, I get emotional. But it's real. I talked about it when I came back after I saw it with the Fest, and I said, oh, you guys, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to. Okay, so you were there, you're there as the consultant, and at what point, so he called you and said, I've written you a role. What point did he say to you, and I want you to be the on-set consultant?
So it was kind of gradual, that it started off that he found out how much knowledge I had, and that, what I did was, for a living, is help people with
Let's
understand
talk about that.
autism.
What do you do besides being a professional actress on a hit show?
Me and my mother and my sister founded a nonprofit called Autism. We developed this because it's geared toward adults transitioning from high school to whatever is their next step, or adults in their adult life who just need that little extra push or little extra help. Because reaching that age of 18 and graduating high school, and I tried every program out there. I tried mainstreaming in college. I tried college with help. I tried just going into supportive living services where I was in full-on housing, being taken care of, and then people came to my house to take care of me, and it seemed to be either geared toward you can do it on your own or you need 100% support. And there didn't seem to be that middle ground of like, I'm pretty capable, but I need a little extra help.
Yeah.
So we just were like, it's not out there, we can't find it. let's make it.
Awesome.
And that's kind of how it came to be. And then it's kind of grown in different directions as our clients have asked for things. And right now our main focus is social programming. That there is so much out there socially that people don't know how to find what is the right niche and is socially comfortable for autism. So we have been looking at places and activities that are sensory friendly, that are easy to navigate, and creating social programming where it's 100% people on the spectrum, plus a few people bring, a friend that they feel comfortable with. So there is, no sense of like I did something wrong, no one understands me, and they can have some sort of social life. And we get people in their 20s, in their 50s, in their 80s, all seeking this out as something they've, not had enough of.
That's got to be very rewarding to see that you've created something that needed to be created. You filled a hole. Now, where do you do this? Where is this located?
This is currently located in Redondo Beach. We are now starting and planning some online stuff because we know it's wanted elsewhere, and we do hope to eventually expand once we can and be anywhere and everywhere we can, and hope that other people, take this up and do it too. But right now, we are housed in Redondo Beach.
What a wonderful thing, and what a wonderful platform. And now that you are on this show and have the ability, I'm sure it's going to open doors for you to be able to talk in places that maybe wouldn't have known about autism before. So what a wonderful thing. And also, just like you were able to educate Josh Thomas about an assistance dog, having you on the show with an assistance dog has got to be informing a whole lot of people about what that's like. For anybody who's listening and still doesn't understand what an assistance dog can do for someone like yourself, let's just talk specifically about you, because everybody's sort of different. But how does Luke help you?
So there are two very specific things he's task trained to do. So one of them is deep pressure therapy. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's similar to like when you have a weighted blanket or a weighted vest or a nice hug. So having autism, when you have that sensory overload and you're not quite in your body, everything's painful. It gives you, if you have pressure on certain pressure points, it just gives you something to focus on and pull you back into your body and able to calm down those sensory reactions.
Is it like a grounding sort of thing? It grounds you?
So for me, it's he will either lay sitting down on my lap, or if I lay down, what's most helpful to me is on my chest, and he will lay right on my chest and give me that pressure wherever I am.
And is it sort of instantly you feel a little bit less anxiety?
It takes a little time, because it's really about like pulling me back into my body and focusing on that one sensation instead of whatever sensation felt harmful to me. And then the other thing he does is when I reach, so that's preemptive before I reach that sensory overload. The other time is if I really do reach that sensory overload, I lose motor function and just freeze in place, because it activates that fight or flight response. And if there's nothing to fight or flee, because it's a sensory reaction, my body just shuts down and tells me, you're safe here, don't move, don't do anything. And I cannot move, which can sometimes not be safe for me. So he's trained to grab my arm and pull me toward the nearest exit, or what he perceives to be the safest place, which he usually finds like a cuddly, cozy blanket, he thinks, and at home is his bed.
Wow. So he'll help guide you to his bed, and then the two of you will sit there and
then
cuddle.
I can recover and get away from whatever was causing me that sensory reaction.
And how long have you and Luke been working together?
About 2 years.
And is your life better because he's in your life?
He has made a huge difference. It's made me feel safer to be able to go places without, a parent or a friend. And I can go places without telling people that I have autism and I need this, and I need you to know that if this happens, because he can just take care of it, I can step out. and then step back in and just be myself rather than feeling like I need to be taken care of. You know?
And just knowing that he's with you, is that sort of like a comfort in and of itself?
I mean, it's always nice to have a friend by you every day, right? Someone you can rely
someone
on.
who's as beautiful as he is. I mean, I'm sure he walks in the room, and I'm sure he lights up the room. Everybody wants to talk to him.
I mean, he's made socializing easier. People approach me and ask me about him, and then if I approach them and just say something about him, it creates something to start a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just oftentimes you walk into the room and it just creates a happier mood for people. He's definitely something on set that people look forward to.
Absolutely.
Having there, yeah.
I can only imagine. But we should say that that is what he does for you, and that for other people, their assistance dogs
all do
do other
different
things. And some people have a companion dog, which is an entirely different thing, correct?
Yes. So service dogs have legal rights, and they're trained specifically to be able to go everywhere. There's also emotional support animals. That is more of a therapy thing, an emotional thing, and they're not legally allowed everywhere or trained to be everywhere. But if you ask permission, a lot of times people will let you have an emotional support animal everywhere. But again, they are not specifically trained, so they will sometimes bark or run around or do things where you see he has been quiet and just laying in the corner and trying not to be noticed, which is what more of a service dog is trained to do.
And I have to say, because it's so hard, because the outside world looks at people and we all place judgments on things. And I look at you and I see this incredibly brave young woman, incredibly capable, incredibly wise, and a real advocate for the community, and a real role model. But we all know that somebody can look like everything is going well, and yet it feels differently on the inside, right? I had to explain to somebody yesterday that I'm shy. And they were like, Shannon, you can't possibly be. You talk all the time. I'm like, that has nothing to do with what it feels like on the inside for me. But so just maybe a little bit of insight for the people who are watching. Is this comfortable for you, or is this a little bit of a push for you?
This is comfortable for me because this is a topic I know. This is something I speak about all the time. But if you were to bring me in to talk about something different, I'd probably be more nervous, think I'd say something wrong. Social situations can definitely be hard for me. I have huge executive functioning problems, and I have to work really hard to do it right, because it definitely, being an actress, there's so many things with executive functioning that I had
Give them a little clue of an example of what that might be that would be hard.
So, for example, your schedule is different every day, and you have to be on that. You have to show up on time, otherwise everything's thrown off, right? So if you have an 8 o'clock call time and you show up at 10 o'clock, they can't film. It's just a problem. So, and you only get the times 24 hours in advance.
Sometimes you're at your hotel and they slide it under the door to tell you what time you're supposed to be there tomorrow.
And then you have every scene is different, and you have a bunch of things to remember. You're blocking your lines, your interactions, while on top of getting it all in sequential order, because we did not film in the order that you see on the screen. So there's a lot of things that you have to do and prepare, and so that was a lot of stuff that I had notebooks planned beforehand, color coding everything, so it was all completely ready. And I did share, I think it was episode 5, the party entrance scene. I had completely the wrong script for that scene. I came in, I was saying different lines, everyone was so confused.
Oh dear.
And it took us a while to figure out that I just hadn't, kept up with my executive functioning and gotten that right. But it was fine. I got the new script and was able to memorize it.
Wow.
Because there are updates frequently on the writing.
They'll rewrite.
Yeah.
But now, so do you have to do that all by yourself, or does somebody help you to be able to manage all of that?
So I hired my sister. It doesn't necessarily have to be my sister, but for this show it was my sister who definitely helped me with it. That she drove me to make sure I was on time. She made sure that I did have the lines I needed, and she got me water and like made sure like there were things, and she made sure he went to the bathroom and all that because I couldn't do the executive functioning for Luke and me at the same time during that. So she did do that for me.
That's awesome.
And yeah, so, and I hope that I can continue to hire someone to do that stuff for me, but it does cost money. I know she would have probably, as my sister, done it for free, but like she was working really hard, and like she does need to have her own job.
Yeah. Well, I think it's notable that anybody who is doing that level of work, especially doing consulting at the same time. So you had multiple jobs going on.
I did have multiple jobs.
They all have assistants. So because that would be hard for anybody, and especially if that's already an area where you have some needs, then I'm so glad you took care of yourself. And said, I got to have some support here. That's really the key. And here's what I see is that even when I was catching up on some of those episodes last night and seeing some of the situations, and my mind was just sort of blown because we're seeing more and more that studios and directors are saying, I've got a character who's on the autism spectrum. I want to audition actors, and I want to see if there are actors who can do this, right? And they're finding the actors, which is wonderful. We're all excited about that. But there is still some trepidation on the studio's part that we've been hearing about, that like, but will they be able to handle this kind of a circumstance? And I got to say that you and Kayla are showing them that absolutely that you guys are handling. I was like so excited for you guys last night, looking at some of those later episodes where you have those kinds of things going on. It wasn't just talking about, there was physical stuff happening, and to hear that you guys were taking care of yourselves, both as women but also as people who have different sensory needs. I'm really proud of you guys. What an amazing example for all of us.
Oh, it's amazing, and I love that they went with authentic casting from lead to background actor. Anything written in the script, any character with autism was played by someone with autism, and my favorite scene representing that is episode 2, classroom scene. Every single actor in that scene was autistic.
Wonderful.
From all of the classroom.
Well, that right there is a reason enough to support the show and watch it. But I guarantee if you watch it, you're going to find yourself shocked. Get ready. You're going to be shocked every single episode. You're going to get emotional every single episode. You're going to laugh every single episode. Sometimes you're going to be like, I don't think I should be laughing at that. But you're not going to be able to help yourself because Josh throws it out there. And then even, amongst the characters, he'll be like, what? That's not funny? He is, I don't want to say evil genius, let's just say genius, but he's a mastermind at getting us to see things in a different way. So unfortunately we're out of time, but it's been so lovely to have you come here and to meet Luke. And if people want to be watching Everything's Gonna Be Okay tonight at 8:30 on Freeform, go to your local listings, see where it is, go get caught up on the first episodes. Write to me and tell me, but you're going to be shocked. I'm just going to tell you, get ready. It's edgy, but it's brilliant. And I love it. I just love it. And have from minute one. So check that out on Freeform. I'm supposed to tell you who we have on the show, but I don't remember who we have on the show. We're doing an oldie but a goodie tomorrow of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. That's why I don't remember. So tune in, and then next week on Monday, I'm just going to tell you, we got a big show. You're not going to want to miss it. Bonnie Yates and Justin Leaf are both going to be here. So really incredible show on Monday, plus a great week next week. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Good morning and welcome to a special edition of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod, and Nancy Allspaw Jackson is on assignment this morning. I can't wait till next week when she can come back and tell us. She is visiting a guest that we've had here before on the show, Meristem. So she's actually gone and is visiting that particular site, and we're going to wait to hear back what she thinks of it. So we're really thrilled about that. But missing her today. But I'm here, and we are going to be with you for this next hour talking about autism. And we hope that you will tune in to some of the different ways that Traven is showing you right there, including autism-live.com. And we want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, and your concerns. We've got a great guest that's coming up a little bit later on, but you know, on Thursdays, I don't even know what Deezer is. That's how old I am. I decided to show that. Somebody's going to have to explain to me what Deezer is, because I'm a geezer, so I don't know what Deezer is. There we are. Okay, but so there I am, s.penrod at autism-live.com. It should just say old lady who does not know and is not hip. There we have it. Shannon Penrod, there it is. That's what it says there. Okay, so on Fridays when we're here for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we like to cover some news stories for you to let you know some things that are happening around the world. So one of the first things, very controversial, want to know your opinion about it. In New York State, the Department of Transportation has issued a new sign that can be placed in a neighborhood that says, there it is, child with autism. So we've seen before when you're driving in a neighborhood and it'll say, you know, deaf child, blind child, just to let drivers know so that they slow their roll. Literally slow their roll. But now for the first time, they've added this to the repertoire that a family in upstate New York can request this. And they're saying that you can ask now that it's there and that it's in one state, you can ask your local town or city if you would like to have one of these. Now it's a little controversial, and already, you know, in the last few days since this happened, I've had conversations with a wide variety of people, and everybody has different feelings about this, you know, because some people say, well, that's just a sign for a predator to start looking for that child. And, you know, I don't have an answer for that. I think it's case by case, and that if you have a child who elopes, then let's face it, the number one cause of death for autism is children who elope from their home and drown. And the second is being hit by a car while they elope. So if that is your child and you are concerned about that, you would want to get a sign. You want to shore up your other safety things and make sure, I don't know, have a neighborhood watch thing or something. I don't know. But check your Mandy's Law. Make sure that if there are people in your neighborhood that you should know about. But there are people all over the world that we should all know about, right? We got to be extra, extra careful. And we have to be concerned about the cars as well. So check it out. If it's something that you want, you can request it for your child. And if you feel that it would be more of a hindrance to your child's safety, then simply don't request it, right? Another very interesting study that comes to us from fiercebiotech.com. There are two studies in the last brief period of time. It was last week that two separate research teams came forward and said that they were shedding light on autism and that it was about proteins, and that it may affect how we want to treat autism in the beginning. Now, I found, you know, we read these all the time, and a lot of time I don't get them, but these two make sense because of all the research that we've covered before. So first of all, scientists at the Gladstone Institutes were looking at originally, because I was like, how did this study start? So originally they were looking at the connection between Alzheimer's and seizure activity, right? So they were looking at those two things, and they discovered this protein that's in the brain that's called tau, T-A-U, tau, and that when you reduce the level of tau, and by the way, this was in mouse models, that it not only reduced the number of seizures in people, but there were also autism-like behaviors that it reduced. It reduced repetition, difficulty socializing, and impaired communication in the mouse model. Now, I wish Nancy Alspaugh Jackson were here because she said years ago, when her husband was ill and dying, he needed care. And for a brief period of time, he was in a memory center, and because that was the only thing that was available. He didn't have a memory problem, but he was in a place where all these other people had memory problems. And she said, Shannon, I'm stunned, because she was there a lot and visiting him and spending, a substantial portion of her day there. And she said, it's eerie how much the Alzheimer's in the seniors resembles autism. And she goes, it's so bizarre that we see the kids, that this comes on and then they have these difficulties, but it's the same with the seniors. And she said, I hope somebody is looking at that. Ta-da! So what they've seen is that if you reduce the level of tau in the brain, that a lot of the things that present as autism in the mouse model, obviously we need to get to human trials, that as even a 50% drop in protein levels can pretty much turn these things around. These particular, again, repetition, difficulty socializing, and impaired communication. By the way, those are the 3 categories that define autism. So they also, as if this was not enough, this was really exciting, they went on to discover that reducing the tau levels actually boosted something called P10, and that when it's an enzyme that actually helps to tamp down the effect of tau, so that when you reduce the tau, the P10 goes up, and then the P10 moderates the tau. So they're looking for they're hoping to develop small molecule drugs that will either reduce tau or boost P10. I can't wait to hear more about that. Okay, and then in the other study, which comes to us from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Brown University, working together, they are looking at the SHANK3 protein, which we have covered before on the show. SHANK3, when you're lacking it. So tau, you have too much, but SHANK3, if you don't have enough of it, then it can make you overly sensitive. In the mouse model, it made them sensitive to the touch of their whiskers, hypersensitivity to light, noises, and other stimuli, and they are relating that to autism. So in any case, they have seen that there are certain people whose brains do not develop SHANK3, and that those individuals tend to be on the autism spectrum. So they're looking for a way to increase SHANK3 and help to lower that sensory sensitivity. Isn't this fascinating? I find it fascinating. Those are 2 studies I'm actually very excited to hear about what happens with them once they move out of the mouse model, right? Okay, and then our last article for today that I wanted to talk a little bit about, this is an article that Nancy Doyle wrote for Diversity and Inclusion, and was really interesting. The title of it is Hiring Autistic Male Coders, Neurodiversity Inclusion or Exploitation. Now, I was a little disappointed because I felt that title was a little bit off topic, because it made it sound like, oh, if we're specifying that a job is for individuals that are neurodiverse, is that in some way exploiting what their talents are? And I thought, well, I'm not going to be against that. But the key here is that it's male coders, neurodiversity, inclusion, or exploitation, because it goes on to talk about the fact that we're not playing to women's strengths, and that one of the things that I thought was really fascinating was that in one study where they just were looking at how women perform on math tests, nothing to do with hiring or anything like that, but a math test. And math is definitive, right? Like there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. And when women were asked to put their name on the top of the math test, they performed poorly, more poorly than they did if they weren't asked to put their name. So if they weren't asked to identify that they were a female, there was something psychologically about that that allowed them to perform better. And this article talks about how women are being disregarded from the beginning of any process, whether it is autism or other. I'm rolling my mic here, sorry. I just thought that this was really fascinating. And I think it's a good read, especially if you have a daughter on the spectrum or if you are a woman that is on the spectrum, to take a look at what she's calling out and saying, hey, you know, that there's systemic exploitation and non-inclusion of women, and that we need to turn that on its head and have systemic inclusion, and that it should be across gender. So there you go. And again, that is Nancy Doyle, Diversity and Inclusion. Okay, and her argument is that your hiring practices should be as diverse as your clientele, which, hey, I'm with you, Nancy. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got a great guest, Ben Hartranft. I'm going to hope that I said that right. He's 21 years old, and he's done some pretty amazing things. He was the Philadelphia Eagles Autism Challenge ambassador and even got to be on the Ellen Show. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about his life and what that was like, coming up after these messages. Stick with us.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Parent to parent, having a compliant child is one of the greatest things on earth. But frequently we ask ourselves, why doesn't my child listen? Well, here are some tips to help us to get a listening, happy, compliant child. First, we want to make sure that we make compliance worthwhile. Whenever your child does something that's compliant, make sure that you praise them and heap rewards on them that are meaningful to them, things they really want. One of the things that we have to be mindful of is that if the child isn't compliant, we have to praise more often. Just heap it on. If you say to yourself, there's nothing to praise, they're not doing anything that I want them to do, then ask them to do something that they already want to do. This is a really tricky way of being able to praise them. And then, of course, the last thing that we want to do is catch them doing good things when they least suspect it. And make sure you heap that praise on, because having a compliant child is one of the best things in life. Token economies are a great way to get to good behavior with your child. Welcome back to Autism Live. We're very excited to welcome for the first time on our show a very wonderful and unique young man. Ben Hartranft is with us. There he is. Hi, Ben. And that is his mom, Sandy, who's there with us. Welcome to the show, you guys. Ben, we're really excited to have you with us. And I want to start by talking a little bit about your family. Describe your family to us.
So I have two brothers. One is 27 and one is 20. It's going to be 25. And they do not have autism. And they work at, one works at Prudential and one works with me.
Wonderful. And now, Ben, you identify yourself as an individual on the autism spectrum. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to talk with both of you a little bit about when you were diagnosed and, what that was like.
You want to start?
I'll start. So, when I first found out when I had autism, I said to my mom, I want to take my autism and wash it away. Like, take it out and just wash my brain away. So now today I just want to advocate for people, talk to people, and try to promote autism awareness and take it to the next level.
I love that. How old were you when you were diagnosed, Ben?
So when he was about 18 months old, we thought he had a hearing issue because he wasn't responding to his name. And we took him to the hearing doctor and everything was fine. And we just kind of checked that box, and nobody ever said you really should keep looking into this because there's some reason why he's not responding to his name. Yeah. And when he was 2, we just didn't think he had enough words.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we took him to speech therapist.
Miss Paula Barson taught me how to talk.
Yeah, that's really when we first got our
diagnosis.
diagnosis.
And today I just talk, and there's no off button on me.
I love it.
Off button on me. I screamed 11 times on a roller coaster.
I love it. I love it. So, what kinds of things, when you were a kid growing up, what kinds of things were particularly hard for you?
Making friends, Today, when we talk about Ellen DeGeneres, we talk about being kind to one another. And if you see somebody alone, join them. That's what I would do. If you see somebody being unkind, stand up for them. If you see somebody that didn't get invited somewhere, invite them.
Wonderful. And Mom, for the other moms who are watching who can relate, what you mentioned before that he wasn't talking as much, what other kinds of things were you seeing that when he was a small child with autism?
Yeah, so when he was really little, I was so locked in on the speech, I kind of missed some of the other symptoms. He was the youngest of 3 boys. We had a really busy household, and I just knew he didn't have enough words. And so I was one day standing at work, and the speech therapist was standing next to me, and I said, do you do speech therapy for kids here? And when she asked why, I told her, and she said, oh, no, you have to talk to the intermediate unit, which is the provider in our area that works for younger kids that aren't in school yet. And they came out and did an evaluation. And when they finished that evaluation, I was just blown away because he was delayed in gross motor, he was delayed in fine motor, everything was behind, and it was so much bigger than what I saw. So I was very thankful for that comprehensive evaluation and the services that we were able to start right away.
Well, and what kinds of, because people are going to look at you, Ben, and they're going to go, you're remarkable, and we're going to talk about some of your achievements in just a minute, but parents are going to start writing in right now saying, what kinds of things did you do that Ben is so great? So what did you do?
So back then, when you said what was hard, everything was a safety issue back then. I mean, he would just run out the door. He had no sense of, boundaries. He had no sense of safety outside. So it was just, if we couldn't see him or hear him, we had better find him.
And now today's technology is like you can have trackers on iPhones, trackers on people, wristbands. I mean, today people are certifications on autism certified stuff.
So there was a lot of things that weren't available back then. But the first services that we put in place were from the intermediate unit, and they took them to a program that was run by Easter Seals. And for 2.5 hours twice a week, I went with them to that program. And I was so grateful for that because I got to see how the different educators and teachers worked with him, and then I would try to take that things home and do it at home. And then we put him on the list for speech therapy, which took 6 months to get a private speech therapist in our area. And they did physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy all at this program. And it was great to have all that in place.
Well, and you, from what I've read about you, Ben, you've had you've got a tight-knit community around you too, that you attend a church and that you also have worked a job for a really long time. What job, because I hear that you started working a job at 16. What was your job at 16?
I started working at Olive Garden when I was 16.
That story.
And one day I was watching the TV, I was watching the Eagles versus the Arizona Cardinals game, and the phone rang and it said Olive Garden. And I said, hello, is this Ben? Hi, yes. Can you come in for an interview? I accidentally hung up on my manager and I had to call him back. And I said, oh, come in for an interview. And I've been there ever since. You know, I started doing salad, then doing breadsticks, then busing and hosting. They've been so great to me. Olive Garden's a huge blessing for me, and all the managers are great.
Now, how did you apply for a job at Olive Garden, or they already knew about it? You did?
I did.
And who got you to the point where you said at 16, was that something that mom did, or did they teach you that at school?
My brothers and my people at school, like, I really think you need a job. And if my brothers got a job, I wanted to get a job. So that's when I applied.
It was so cool to have that modeling for him because he just didn't really see any limitations on himself. If his brothers did it, why wouldn't he? So actually when he was 14, every time he saw a job opening, he would apply, he'd put an application in. So it took 2 years before anybody reached out and offered him this job. And then I started panicking because I wanted to know, would the school support him in that? Because they had, some things going on there. And they're like, no, if it doesn't happen on school hours, we can't help. And then we talked to the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, and they're like, no, if he's still a student, we can't be involved. But luckily, the organization was really awesome, and they did, it was a perfect job for him to start off with, and they really worked with him well.
Well, go Olive Garden, and go you, Ben, because this is fabulous. I'm sorry?
Don't forget the unlimited salad and breadsticks.
Yeah, no kidding. Best salad ever. I love the olives. Okay, so, but then you have some pretty exciting things that have happened in your life, including, we sort of teased before, that you've been on the Ellen Show. Talk to us about how it all started.
Oh my gosh. So I said to my mom over here, Mom, when I went Homecoming King, I want to get on Ellen. Ben, are you crazy? Do you really think it's ever going to happen? I'm going to try. So I wrote in. I haven't heard anything. Everybody tried. She had over 40 people wrote in. One day, we were coming back from Six Flags, get a phone call that said Burbank on it. And I said, hello? Is this Ben? Is this the Ellen Show? And it was one of the producers. I had to keep a secret for 6 weeks. I couldn't tell anybody.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Well, you sort of glossed over the fact that you were Homecoming King. So what was that like?
Homecoming King was great. I told my mom again, I want to run for Homecoming King. And it was in the summer, 4 years ago, and she goes, well, Ben, I don't know. I don't know if you can win. The Debbie Downer over here.
But I love it. I love that he's got these ideas, Mom, and that you're trying to keep him, with his feet on the ground, but doesn't matter because his ideas are panning out. So you were on the Ellen Show. What was that like?
It was unreal. She gave me Universal tickets. She gave me $10,000 for the Eagles Autism Challenge from Shutterfly, and then she also gave me Eagles autographed items and Eagles tickets to a game.
Okay, so at what point did you become the Eagles Autism? What is the name of it? It's the
Eagles Autism Challenge. So Eagles Autism Challenge was started by Jeffrey Lurie. His brother is on the autism spectrum, and they want to take autism awareness to action. when they won the Super Bowl, I got invited to go carry the Vince Lombardi trophy at the ring ceremony. At the ring ceremony. So I touched the Lombardi trophy.
What was that like? Was that cool?
It was so cool. I mean, honestly, my parents thought I was going to drop it.
Is that what your nightmare was, Mom?
I just, that is so precious, that opportunity to be there. So if we take it back one step, we got to a point in our lives where you spend a lot of time with guilt, like, why did this happen? Did I do something? Is there some reason why he has this autism? And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is not serving any functional purpose. And so we decided to get involved in research because we thought if there's nothing we can do about what we have right now, maybe we can make a difference going forward. And so we got involved with our children's hospital locally, and Ben did, 7 or 8 research studies through them.
And then the Eagles did that story.
And so one day the Eagles, our Philadelphia Eagles, reached out to Children's Hospital and
When we were
said,
at Huddle Up.
we want to highlight somebody on the autism spectrum. And so they did a whole story on Ben. So that kind of started the connection there, and then they gave him some wonderful opportunities.
And then I went up to Jason Kelsey. I don't know if you heard of him. He's the center for the Philadelphia Eagles. I work at Dorney Park, and I said, Jason, do you want to go to Dorney Park? I'm in. Are you sure? I'm positive. So we literally met at Dorney Park, and we spent 4 hours on the park together. Mom over here was like, oh, Ben, I really don't know.
Well, it's so good that you know for her, Ben.
He tells me that sometimes I hold him back, but I remind him I'm his kite string. So
Charlie Brown.
Yeah, but he's taking you on a wild ride, is what the truth is. And I think it's just beginning. I think this is just the beginning of the wild ride that is going to be Ben's life. So Ben, now, as a result of all of this, you're doing speaking engagements, right?
Yes.
Talk about where you do speaking engagements and what you talk about.
I do my speaking engagements at different schools, so I did about 40 different schools, and I talk about never let go of your dreams and my autism. And I'm going to a couple this week, and then I'm going to a couple in April.
Wonderful. And so if people want to book you to come to their event, where do they go to do that, Ben?
So I actually had my business card on me. Where do we go? Oh, perfect. You can visit my website, which is right here.
Okay, we can't see it. Can you read it to us?
I'll read it to you guys. Sorry.
That's okay.
So my email is BENERGY, capital EAC, @yahoo.com. And my website is My Journey. So it's benergy1.wordpress.com. Again, benergy1@wordpress.com. If you would like to come hear me speak, or if you want to book me, or if you want to just donate to the Eagles Autism Challenge, we can also put my website on there and a link to my donation page.
There we go. So spell the website for me again. It's BENERGY 1, the number 1, and then .wordpress.com. Okay. And if they go there, they can get to all the other things as well.
That's true.
Well, Ben, I cannot wait to see all the things that you do. You're still working at Olive Garden?
Yes, I am.
And then what are your hopes and dreams, Ben? What do you want to do?
Yay! I can talk about it. Okay. So my next goal is to actually get on Jimmy Fallon, Kelly Clarkson, the Tammy Hall Show, Good Morning America, and just talk about autism. I really want to get on more TV shows to just promote and just give parents hope.
And what would you want to talk about on those shows? Give us the pitch.
All right, I would just tell them to never let go of your dreams and to always be successful, and to never, ever, ever, ever never talk to somebody who has questions. So if somebody has a question who is on the autism spectrum, you can always go up to them and they can start a conversation.
Absolutely. It's okay to ask, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I would like to just give a word of encouragement to parents. One of the things that we found so helpful was being involved in things where parents were a little bit ahead of us on the journey. So Special Olympics, there were a lot of parents, and they helped us navigate the financial organizations and the medical organizations and all the different programming in our area. And then one of the things that's really important in our life is our faith in God. And he always brought the right person at the right time, because part of Ben's journey is we didn't think he would speak, and he brought us just to the right speech therapist who broke that open. And then the schools got to a point where they kind of gave up on Ben and said, oh, he
Reading.
probably is never going to learn to read. And again, God brought just the right person with the right program.
And the Talk Institute taught me how to read, so I went from a kindergarten to a second grade reader, 2 years at that school. So God really brought me to that school, because that was a huge accomplishment. And I also would like to throw in there about God, about the Bridge Ministry. So God has brought me to a great disability ministry at Calvary Saverton. My faith helps me through hard times. I love the Bridge Ministry is through 35 to 35. So I'm going to say like 15 to 35. And it's a great organization that you can serve, and the teens and adults pour out their spirits, and just God does a lot of things out there, and it's really incredible.
Because one of the things that happens to families, no matter what their faith is, a lot of times they just drop out of organized religion because the churches and synagogues aren't very welcoming, or they don't really know how to handle it. But the church that we found actually has a person on staff that runs their disability ministry, and it's really an amazing organization, and we're very grateful.
What a wonderful, wonderful story you guys have. It's so inspirational,
much.
and I think it's going to help a whole lot of people. And, I love that you're talking, because a lot of people feel disenfranchised by their churches, so I love how you're talking about that. But I also think that job component is super duper important. The fact that you were convinced that you knew you were going to work a job from day one. We have Joanne Lara as a regular on the show. She does Autism Works Now, and she says how important it is for all of us to talk to all of our children and ask all of our children, what do you want to be when you grow up? What job do you want to have? And that not a lot of families just assume that their children are not going to work, and this is not the path. And we can see. Go ahead.
One thing. And I got my driver's license 2 years ago.
Yeah. And that was life-changing for me because I was Uber mommy. And so, we weren't sure if he would drive. And we took, quite a long time to get it, and lots of medical appointments, lots of help from different organizations. But he's been driving for a year and a half now, and it's been freeing for him and freeing for us, too.
Yeah.
And that's a real blessing.
Well, you got to tell us how did you handle that? What were the organizations that helped you to teach him how to drive? I'm right there. I have a 16-year-old.
So we started with my husband, who did the other two
He had a
boys.
full head of hair, and now he doesn't anymore.
But OVR, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, actually paid for driving lessons for him. And what my husband said was the man who came had a brake on his side of the car. So it really helped to take him out on the road because it was safe. Because if anything did happen, he could obviously stop the car when needed. And so that really helped. Just really taking his time. One of the things Ben did was on his phone, there was an app where you could practice the written exam. So he kept taking the test.
And I failed 6 times, and then I passed the 7th try. One day I went in and I failed, and I cried so hard, and I said, I'm done, I don't want to do it anymore. And then one day I passed, and I went, woohoo!
And now you're a safe driver.
Yes.
Yep.
That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So ultimately, after you get on all of these talk shows, Ben, what kind of a job do you want to end up with? Do you want to be somebody who continues to be a speaker? Do you want to work your way up Olive Garden? What do you want to do?
So I actually have 2 jobs that I'm working at right now. I work at Access Services, and they help people with disabilities. I help with their social events and stuff. And then I also work at a movie theater, and I'm the guest ambassador. So I literally greet guests all day as they come into the door. Like, they're sometimes upset or sad. And that's what I do at Dorney Park as well. I actually go around, talk to guests, and turn the frowns to smiles. And I basically fascinate them if they need help, or sometimes I give them surprises like soda cups and the wristband and everything.
One of the things that we found is he's been able to get a lot of part-time jobs. We haven't really locked into that full-time job. So that we called it the adult cliff. We could finally figure out all the paperwork and everything for school, and then 21 happens, and you're like, oh, wow, all that's kind of useless now.
Yeah.
So navigating the adult world has been a little harder. We'd love to find him a full-time job. He loves working at Dorney Park. Unfortunately, it's seasonal because we live in a climate not like California,
I'd love to live in
where
California.
it snows, so the amusement parks aren't open all year round. So still trying to find that balance. He would love to be a full-time speaker, but finding enough opportunities there isn't always, opportunity too.
Ben, I'm going to tell you a secret that I don't think I've disclosed here on the show before, but my husband's full-time job that he works, he's an actor at Universal Studios Hollywood. Yeah, and so he works in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. And so it's a union acting job. That's his full-time job. Something to think about.
Yeah.
So
He loves amusement parks. That's his thing. Roller coasters and amusement parks.
So has your husband ever met any famous people?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we live in Hollywood, so we all meet famous people. They're around all the time.
If I'm ever back on the Ellen Show or Kelly Clarkson, I'm going to let you guys know.
Oh, please let us know, because we'll be happy to tweet about it and share, tell all of our viewers to watch. Ben, we think that you're incredible. Obviously, you're incredible because you've already been on the Ellen Show. My goodness. I know a lot of people who say that they want to be on the Ellen Show, Ben, but not very many of them get to be on the Ellen Show. So you're clearly doing something right, and we look forward to hearing all the good things that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Mom, thank you. What an incredible mom you are. And what a joy and a treat you are, Ben.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, you guys have a good day.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
What an inspirational mom and son. I'm tossing my sign around because it's so exciting. So hopefully check out his page and book him to come to your school. For heaven's sake, what a wonderful speaker, or for your corporate event. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with more of Autism Live. Stick with us.
Life-threatening aspects of autism. Unfortunately, autism can be a life-threatening condition. There are things that are associated with it that parents need to know about. First of all, there's the risk of seizure. It's heightened in people with autism. There's also the risk of what they call elopement, which means basically running away. Elopement can lead to things like exposure, drowning if they get near bodies of water, and maybe being hit by cars. Being hit by cars is certainly something that seems to be emerging as a problem in people with autism. So what do? We have to take certain steps to keep them safe to start. That means at home. Let's look around the home first. Where are your points of entry? Barriers, doors, windows, access to bodies of water, gates, fences. You have to look at school, because people with autism can sometimes elope from school or things like that, daycare. So you have to make sure that it is written into their plan, wherever they are, that people are going to be responsible. That may include a tracking device. For some people with autism or Asperger's, a tracking device might be useful. It might help people know where they are, so in case someone has taken them a place that they shouldn't be taken, kind of tricked them. Sometimes you get that happening with your teenagers, or they're just a child that's unable to communicate or speak very well, and you need to know where they are. Consider that. There's a new generation of tracking devices. It can go in their shoe, can go in their jean, maybe in a cell phone. And I would also add that one of the most life-threatening aspects of autism is sadly being bullied, socially excluded, things like that. That's always happening in people with autism spectrum disorder. People bully them, exclude them. The risk of suicide is unfortunately very high. So do not be afraid to probe, ask uncomfortable questions, see what's happening. Even if they don't tell you, you need to ask other people at school what they know, what they've seen. Even though it's an uncomfortable thing, we do need to be aware that this is a very dangerous situation at times. Be very, very vigilant. Stay upbeat, be positive, and realize no one person and no one family can keep a child with autism safe all by themselves. Get the support you need, look around, be vigilant. It's better to take steps you feel that you don't need too soon than too late.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Okay, so a lot has happened recently. A couple of weeks ago, we did on the show, I'd gone through all of the disability plans of all of the candidates that were that had made one available online that were running for the Democratic nomination here in the United States. Obviously, that field has changed exponentially. So now it appears, and anything could happen at any moment, but it appears that one of 3 people will be the president of the United States starting next January, and that will either be, you know, the current president, Trump, or it will be Joe Biden, or it will be Bernie Sanders. And I'm referring to disability plans here. So I just want to recap a little bit because we are a group of people, the greater autism community, and by greater I mean, of course, individuals who are on the autism spectrum, which we're going to be talking more about their voting rights, because if you are a person on the autism spectrum, you very likely have voter rights or should. And if you have a child who is 18 or older on the autism spectrum, they very likely have or should have voting rights. So important that we all vote, right? No matter who you're voting for. Now, it's important to me that we know about a lot of different issues, right? But we all have different issues that we want to know about. So the one that we have in common is that we want to know what plans these folks have for individuals who are on the autism spectrum. We covered this before, and now the field has changed. We should say that the current president does not have policies that are issued outside of what the current policies are, right? And we are seeing those policies as they play out. So that we have access to, and we're seeing day to day what we have access to. But for the other 2, they're proposing new things. And so I just want to go back and show you that this is the Bernie Sanders plan. And it is lengthy, double-sided, small print, and it starts with, I'm trying to see, 2.5 pages that he says right out the gate, using executive action to advance disability rights. And he, point by point, lists a bunch of things that he will use executive action very quickly. The great thing about executive action is that, you know, it doesn't get bogged down in committee, and it doesn't have to get through the Senate. It just, you know, you say boom, and there are a long list of things here. By the way, on the front page too, he also gives you his key points so that you can see, but it's all here in one place as it relates to education. There are many different categories. There's housing, there's education, there's job opportunities, there's healthcare, there's discrimination and criminalization of disability, which we all need to be very aware of, that more and more people on the autism spectrum are being arrested and don't have the ability, there's a whole category here that's about social justice, don't have the ability or the knowledge or the resources to get support. Obviously, there's education in here. Housing for all. I mean, this is a lengthy, well thought out, eliminate medical debt and predatory lending and veterans, separate categories there. Digital inclusion, immigration with inclusion. This is all just about disabilities. This is Bernie Sanders' plan. Now, Biden's plan is much smaller. Let's remember that Trump's does not exist anywhere definitively. It's just a living, breathing thing, right? But Joe Biden's folks decided that they would do this in a smaller way, and they have their plans. Their disability plan is often segmented off into other plans. So, for instance, they have the plan on education, which is just the plan on education. Then you go to that, and then there is a segment of it that talks about, you know, for individuals with disabilities. Same thing with, you know, for older people, for long-term care, for health care, justice, they're all segmented off. And so there's very little here that's just, I have this policy for disabilities. And I want to say to the Biden camp, this is not going to work. We need for you to get closer to this if you want us Like we need to be lobbying because this is somebody who may be president. We need to be lobbying and saying, hey, you got the support of Pete Buttigieg. So like when we went through this, I said the two people who have the best plans, that I love Mayor Pete and that I loved Bernie Sanders. They both had things that I liked. And if I could marry the two together, it would make me really happy. So I'm saying to the people in the Biden camp, all you have to do is look to the Pete people and say, hey, who the people that you had working on this, can we have them work on this? I'm just saying, right? Because I don't know who's going to be president. I don't even know who I'm going to vote for at this point in time. But let's get somebody who has really all of this. Let's get it together, fellas. That's what I'm saying. Because if we don't lobby for this, who will? Right? And what I have learned over the years is that the autism community is this ginormous, and I started to talk about the greater autism community because first of all, individuals on the spectrum, and they can and should vote, and they have a say in all of this, right? And we want to be listening to them. So all of the self-advocates that are out there, first and foremost, we want to know, what do you want in the plan, right? But then there is the greater autism community, which is all of the people who care about individuals on the autism spectrum. And that includes the parents and the teachers and the people who do therapy. All of us care about those individuals on the autism spectrum. When you put all of us together, we are a voting bloc that is seriously fierce and that has the ability to move mountains if we speak in a voice together. Now, we don't agree on all things, right? There are self-advocates who are watching that are not a fan of me, right? And I'm okay with that. Let's agree to disagree on a whole bunch of stuff, but I think there's a bunch of stuff we could agree on, like healthcare, like jobs, and like social justice. I 100% think that we could agree on that. And then we turn our megaphone, it's like the Horton Hears a Who, right? If the whole community went, hey, I think we could be heard and make a real difference here. I will say that there is a group within the Democratic Party that works on this and has been working on this for a very long time, even when Secretary Clinton was running for office. There was this whole commission of people, a task force that was working on disabilities and creating policy, a lot of which we saw in these reports. We're not really seeing it in the Biden report, which I don't really understand. But some of which we saw in the Sanders, some of which we saw in the Warren, some of which we saw in the Buttigieg. So I would love for all of the, let's get definitive here. Who's going to support? We need this. That group of people is still working and functioning. And by the way, there are a lot of people who are on the committee. It's not just about autism. It's about all disabilities. And the leader of the task force is someone who has a disability, and I would say over 50% of the people on the task force identify themselves as having a disability of one sort or the other. So, and then there are other people who have expertise in different areas. So, I hope they're talking to these people, because we need to get policies in place so that we all know what we're doing when we step into that voting booth between now and November, and then most especially in November, right? Because it should be something that is of concern to us. So that's what I have to say about that. We're going to take another break, and then we'll come to close out the show. Stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, we talked about the first step to empowerment. Accept and embrace this challenge. Sometimes you have people that support you in your denial. Maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your mother. When I expressed my concern to my pediatrician about Wyatt losing language around the age of 2, his response, maybe he's a late talker, he's a boy. Let's wait and see. But what about the temper tantrums? What about the fact that he put his head through the kitchen window? What about the bite marks and scratches all over my arms and chest? He said he's probably just frustrated that he can't express himself. Let's wait and see. but autism doesn't afford us that luxury. Of course, I was relieved with my pediatrician's reassurances, but I should have gone with my gut, because if I had, I could have gotten a diagnosis 2 years earlier, and I lost 2 valuable years that could have been spent on early intervention. And finally, when Wyatt was diagnosed, he was misdiagnosed. But of course, part of that was my problem too. I lied in a lot of those parent questionnaires so things looked better. I can't turn back the hands of time, but I can recommend that you face this challenge head on. Denial prevents us from walking a path we eventually will have to walk anyway. The sooner you face the truth, the sooner you can help your child. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep the faith.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. 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 Let's get wild.
Hi, it's Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to What's Left. We're enjoying some wine. We're gonna make some fake bourbon chicken tonight, but we're not using bourbon. It's not gluten-free. So what we're doing, and Kristen, you're doing a great job at pounding and getting out all of your energy on that chicken, so go take it out.
I know. You know, how many of us moms are at a park or we're at a grocery store and somebody walks up to you and, you know, your child's having a meltdown and, you know, having not one of those fun days. This is a great thing to come home to. You would come home and really pound that chicken and you would feel so much better. And that's basically, it kills 2 birds with 1 stone.
You're making a great meal for your family.
Yes, and you're feeling great.
You're feeling better about that jerk who said, why can't you get your kid under control?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take all your pounded, aggressive chicken and start to saute it in the skillet. And I'm just going to add a little bit of my grapeseed oil. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this in. We love the way we're going to just try to brown this up and cook it a little bit. Just a little bit of salt and pepper on top. And we're just going to go ahead and brown this. Great, Kristen. Great job. I think we're almost all brown here, so I'm going to get your help over at the cutting board, if you don't mind.
The cutting station.
The cutting station. We're going to cut this in about 1/3 slices. You go chop it up.
Okay.
I'm going to start on the sauce.
Okay.
We're going to take the orange juice, water, and add that in. And I'm going to measure out the fake soy sauce, 1/3 cup. Add that in. Take in your ketchup and your brown sugar and go ahead and put that in. So in here is the red pepper flakes and ginger. So we're going to go ahead and add that in. So in the red pepper flakes, if you've got a kid that's really sensitive and doesn't like to bring a lot of heat to the kitchen, you can definitely omit that. That's not a problem. And then my favorite, as much garlic as tolerated. And the last thing that we're going to do, and as we get this heated up on the skillet, is we're going to pull this in, thicken to the sauce, and add in the arrowroot to thicken it. So we're going to go back to the frying pan. And put in our sauce, and we're going to bring it to a boil, and that's when I'm going to add the arrowroot. What arrowroot does for everything, like when we're baking with gluten-free flours, this adds kind of the oomph to hold it together. Arrowroot is also a great sauce thickener. So let's go in and add the chicken. Thank you again for helping get this all together. I made extra sauce because I'm a saucy girl. So we made a really nice meal here tonight. We're talking just the right flavors, right texture. So I'm going to serve you up to what we're going to have for dinner, if that sounds good to you. Yes! So
I always love coming over.
So what we made over here is just really some, what I call my dirty rice. And it's just some of the really nice different spices. I use a little red pepper flakes in that as well. Beaumont, parsley, and just salt and pepper. It's really simple. And some of my favorite, which is zucchini sauteed. So I'm going to just go ahead and serve you up, and you can get to be my guinea pig once again.
I will always be a good guinea pig anytime you cook.
Bon appetit, my friend.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us at Autism Live. Kristen, I had fun with you today.
I always have fun. Thank you.
It is. It's great. And we had fun with you, too. And if you have questions or want to see us cook some more different dinners, just email us. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. Or go to Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive, or Taka Now. Taka's got tons of recipes, over 2,000 recipes ready for you to come and explore and have some fun. And thanks to Holly for this great bourbon-free bourbon chicken. And we'll see you next time on What's Love? Bye guys.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So I was supposed to go over the things that we were doing last week. Do you see how I like pack up all of my papers and then I never have the paper that I'm supposed to have? Okay. It's just like when you go to the grocery store. Do you do this? It's an IQ test. But you take your bags with you to the grocery store, and the first thing that I do is I put my purse in the little part where kids usually sit, and then I put my bags in the bottom of the cart, and then I proceed to put all of the groceries on top of the bags and pile them on top of my purse. So then when I get to the checkout, we have to dig the bags out from underneath the stuff so that we can bag the stuff, and I have to dig my purse out. And I always say this is an IQ test, and I fail every single time. The other day I did this at Trader Joe's, and while I was digging my purse out, a bottle of garlic olive oil went, over the edge, shall we say, and so now my shoes, my shoes smell like garlic olive oil. I guess there are worse things, but it's an IQ test. And same thing here, where it's just like there's one piece of paper you have to have at the end of the show, and I always pack it up before the end of the show. Not winning the IQ test. Here we go. It's an executive function thing. Okay, so on the show next week, on Monday, we've got Bonnie Yates is going to be with us discussing your rights, and it's IEP season, so she's got a big show planned for you guys. On Tuesday, we have a best of. I know you're going to love it. On Wednesday, we have Dr. Doreen Grampichet, who's going to be with us answering your questions live. On Thursday, we have the folks from Clarify. They've been on the show before. This is a saliva test for autism that I think you're going to be really excited about. So they're going to be with us on Thursday talking about that. And then next week's Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we have Yadira Calderon, who's going to be talking about her wonderful, wonderful daughter, who just competed in a really cool skating contest. And we're also going to have Denise Voigt with us. So that will be a great show. We're looking forward to it. And Nancy should be back, and she'll tell us all about her trip to Meristem and what she thought of it. So, Traven, I have no idea. How much time have I got left? Anything I can talk about? Okay, so I've got a couple of minutes here. So I just want to talk about this month of autism awareness that we've got staring down at us. And that we've been told by the CDC to expect disruption. And it's very likely that some autism events are going to be postponed or even canceled as we see more things happening and not happening. And I just want to say that it's a wonderful time to investigate all the things that are online. There are a lot of resources that are online. My one fear in all of this is that when we put people in isolation, they feel isolated. And that if you are in an area where you're being asked to stay home and your child is being asked not to go to school because of the novel coronavirus, I hope that you will reach out to us here, that we're happy to answer questions. We're looking at putting on a little bit more time live so that you guys can be interacting and talking with us and talking with others. But I hope that it won't deter you from getting that April boost from that everybody feels when you get your battery recharged and be reminded that A, there's hope, and B, you're not in this alone, right? Because you know what I always say here, si se puede, hold hands, we can do this together, right? So even if you are in a place where you're being asked to stay at home, thank goodness for the internet. And I hope that you will reach out with us here and to all the other support groups that there are. And I think you'll see that there's going to be an explosion of things on the internet to connect all of us so that none of us feels like we're doing this alone. It already feels that way for autism. We don't need to feel it extra, right? So if you're if you've got ideas of things that you want to see if you're being quarantined, write to us, let us know what it is that would be helpful to you, because that's really what we're here about, right? And we will get through this. We've gotten through other things. We will get through this. And somebody was saying the other day, it's like, find the pluses in everything, right? And while this is terrible, and there are some people who are sick now and probably more getting sick, while all that's happening, let's be concerned about that, but let's find opportunities for how we can move the dial forward, how we can help our kiddos, help our teenagers, help our young adults, to be more like Ben, right? Get a job and be excited about what's going on. That's how we all need to be. So stay tuned here, but also be writing into us. Tell us the kind of programming that you would like to see if and when you are stuck at home with your kiddo on the autism spectrum. We're going to be here for you. So that's all for today. Come back later on next week and have a good weekend. Until Monday, give yourself a hug from us and one for your kiddo too. Bye-bye for now.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live and to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy, I don't think your computer, there you are. There
I am. Hi, Shannon. Good
Hi,
morning.
Nancy. Haven't seen you in a whole week.
I know. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I'm better that you're here. It's so fun to be with you this morning. And I'm excited because we have an amazing guest this morning that's going to be
I'm very excited.
But we'll talk about that in a second. But just, this check-in, because we have some viewers saying, hello, gorgeous people. Hello, gorgeous to you. So we're thrilled because we got this big day today, Nancy, here at Autism Live, and we're kicking it off this morning with you. And Julie Matthews is going to be joining us in just a second, talking with us about nutrition and being healthy and keeping our kids healthy and setting them up for success. Then later on today on Autism Live, we have our very last in a series. We're doing afternoon shows right now, Nancy, featuring card heroes. These are the people who are still, I know you've got some of them coming to your house, some of these amazing people. And I'll tell you what, I got to be honest with you, this hour in the afternoon that we're spending with these young people has been the thing that I needed so badly because they fill me with hope. These people and how much they love our kids, and to hear them get emotional about how much they're missing our kids. Oh, I don't know about you, Nancy, but when I hear about how people feel privileged to work with our kids, it makes me feel at least 100 pounds lighter than I am.
Yes, it does. And there are a lot of those guardians that, really feel like this is their life's work to do this. And you got to love them for that.
Absolutely. So it's delightful to have them with us. And Dr. Graham Pichet is with us during that hour. And today is her birthday. And I just want to
Oh.
say to anybody who watches the show and has ever learned something from Ask Dr. Doreen, or you've had the pleasure to have had CARD employees work with you or with your kiddo, please spread the love, send in a message either in this show or tune into the 2:00 hour when she's here, 2:00 Pacific time, and tell her yourself happy birthday, because to me, she's the original CARD hero, right? She's the CARD hero from which all CARD heroes spring, because it wouldn't have happened without her. She created the place. It was her vision. So make sure that you tune in for that. And plus, I have a special little video that I'm going to be debuting in that second hour later on today with two very, very, very special guests who join me to say happy birthday to Dr. Graham Pichet. And believe me, they've never been on the show before, and you'll love it. So okay. And I want to let you guys know that we're going to be joined any second by our guest, our fabulous guest, Julie Matthews from Nourishing Hope. And you guys are already writing in questions. We will make sure that she has opportunity to hear those questions. But they will be from a nutritional and health standpoint. But I think so far what I'm seeing, that you guys are in line with that, saying hello to everybody wherever they are. I know we've got several different continents already joining us, Nancy, which is super awesome. And yeah, she's in our waiting room. So let's welcome Julie Matthews, Nancy, to be with us, because we don't want to fraud around today. We don't get Julie very often, and we want to make sure that we get plenty of time to talk to her.
Following her advice for many years now for my own sons.
Me too. Julie, welcome to Autism Live and to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. You're here with Shannon and Nancy.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
So thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
This is so wonderful. We've been talking about this all week. We're so excited that you're here because Nancy and I are big fans of yours. As Nancy just said, she's been following your advice. I've been following your advice. And I think both of us feel like it's really helped us with our kids. Am I right, Nancy?
Yes, I feel like Julie's advice has helped me a lot with my own son. So really thrilled to actually meet her today and have a chance for our viewers to ask her questions, because there's a lot to get into here.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear.
Yeah, and maybe we want to start off by let's hit the highlights here first. That your website, which is Nourishing Hope, is it .com or .org?
NourishingHope.com.
.com. Okay, and you have a book. Which tell us the name of the book.
Nourishing Hope for Autism.
Do you see a theme here, folks? and then you have a summit that's coming up very soon. What is the name of the summit?
NourishingHopeSummit.com.
There you go. There's the theme. We don't have to guess. And tell us when and how we would access that summit.
So that runs from April 20th to the 26th. It's all free online. We have 5 interviews every day for a whole week. And we're going to go, it's actually designed a little bit more like a course in that each day has a theme. So we start with, what's the science behind all of this? And then we go into, how to support what good, healthy nutrition looks like and picky eaters and really helping them. And we go, step by step through helping with anxiety and hyperactivity and mood and focus and all of that. And we just take people through so that whether you're a brand new beginner and you haven't started anything and you want to understand why should I spend my time doing this, or you are really experienced and you've been doing it for 10 years and you want to know what's next, we have things for all the different families.
That's wonderful because, I remember being a newbie and hearing you speak and going, okay, I have new things to do. And it really created an entirely different path for us that we had many benefits from. But, now I've been on this path for a while and I want to hear some of the new things because Nancy, you and I have been doing this for a hot minute, have we not?
That's right, we have been. And it's always good to hear new things. I'm curious, Julie, before we dive into some of your recommendations and other things, just to find out how you got into this path.
It's a really great question. People always ask me. I feel like it was divine intervention. I was in nutrition school and I was studying about, my first question was, I was actually at a park and there were all these kids and it was like a kids fair and there was like pizza and donuts and all sorts of junk food. And I started to think, is this part of the reason we've got some of the childhood epidemics like ADHD in such high amounts these days? And so I started studying that. I did a big paper on that. And then it was just the first man that I met that I interviewed was Michael Lang. And Michael Lang has since passed away from pancreatic cancer. But at the time, he said, we spent 5 minutes talking about ADHD when I interviewed him. And we spent all the rest of the time on autism and gluten and dairy and glutathione and all of this. And he said, nobody is doing this. We need people that do this. And I just thought, well, I guess this is my new calling in life. And it was mostly because of seeing the kids suffering so much and then having them be told that there's nothing they could do when I knew that there were things that they could do. So that's really how it all started. And after diving into it and helping families and seeing kids feel better and get better, I mean, you can imagine I was committed. So that's how it got started.
Great.
Amazing. Amazing. And we've already got people who are writing in and saying that they've already registered for the seminar because they can do it right now, right? If they go to nourishinghope.com.
Absolutely. They can go there now. And as we go through the conversation today, I have a special handout that I created actually for our conversation today, but everybody that registers will get this handout we'll talk about, as well as a bunch of other things. So yes, they can go there anytime and sign up.
Okay, wonderful. Now, we have been saying all week long that you've got 3 things that you want to recommend that we can do in this emergency, because I think a lot of us have felt a little less empowered. You can't quite get to the stores that you used to be able to get to or get to the items that you could get to, making it a little bit harder. But if we've seen some success with this kind of thing, then we know we don't really want to, this is not the moment that we want to let it slip, right?
Exactly.
And for people who have not yet tried, some of the things that you're going to talk about, there are some benefits to doing these things immediately right now in this COVID emergency, correct?
I believe so. I'm not going to claim to be a COVID expert, but you can even talk, you look at the World Health Organization, the UK government, they're all saying the best thing we can do right now. There was an article I was just reading, I can probably post the link. The best thing we can do is eat healthy and try to be as healthy as we can. And
I got to be honest, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I wasn't even thinking about that in terms of staying healthy. I was thinking about staying sane because you're stuck in your house with your kiddos and you want to minimize behaviors. And but there is a benefit to keeping your inflammation load down. I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to let you tell. But can you tell us the 3 things? And Nancy and I are going to drop our cameras out so you get to be full screen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, I know. But we're here. We're not going away. So we'll be right here.
Great. So to me, the first thing that families can do is get rid of the junk food, the artificial additives, processed food. That can do an incredible, that can play a really powerful role in helping kids and their behavior. We know from decades of research that artificial colors, flavors, preservatives are known to create hyperactivity and irritability in all types of children. So whether they have a condition or they're neurotypical, or we just know that these additives can create behavioral challenges. And so that's the first one. And whether it's good or bad, a lot of the junk food is not in the stores anyway, because sadly, people are buying junk food in larger amounts than ever. So there isn't a lot of it. I guess that's a good thing. But if it's in your home, that stuff is usually pretty easy to get rid of and can make a really, really profound difference. To me, just doing that is really going to be very helpful. I have seen kids get very hyper, not be able to sleep at night, aggressive, anxious, irritable, can't focus, jumping, all over, just not being able to stay calm from those artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives. So that would be number one. Number two would be to try to get as healthy a food as possible. As I was saying earlier, that the World Health Organization and others are saying, the best thing we can do is, in addition to obviously all the obvious things like trying to be as safe as possible with washing our hands and all that stuff, is to try to make our system as strong as possible. And that involves eating healthy food. And so vegetables, fruits, whole foods, less processed foods, those kinds of things. And then the third piece of it is, Shannon, you were talking about inflammation. So reducing inflammation as much as we can. So dairy creates a lot of congestion, a lot of inflammation. Gluten can create a lot of inflammation in the gut. So as we go through, we can talk a bit more about gluten and dairy. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk as we go on here. I created a handout of ideas for people that have 3 ingredients or less. So healthy food you can do for your family right now with staples you most likely have in your kitchen at this point in time, or you should be fairly easy to get them at the grocery store that are going to be healthy and support your system. And they all happen to be gluten-free and dairy-free. So whether you want to try a gluten-free and dairy-free diet now, or just add some new foods so you can start to incorporate some because you might want to try a gluten-free, dairy-free diet at some point, you'll have a host of 10 or more very easy kid-friendly recipes you can try right away. And we can dive into some of those. But when people sign up for Nourishing Hope Summit, they will get this handout in addition to a number of other resources that I can share.
Spectacular. Julie, let's talk about the gluten-free, dairy-free diet for a minute, because it is highly recommended in autism circles. A lot of parents do adopt that diet, but a lot of parents think it's too difficult to do. What do you say to that for those that say it's too difficult?
Yes. Well, it's like, I want to first acknowledge it is challenging at the beginning. When you're first getting started, it's a big learning curve. And so you have to figure out all the things that might have that in there. And then you have to get your child to eat them, which when you have a child with autism is not an easy task always. So I understand where people are coming from. But once you get the kind of the foundations of it in place, it is no more difficult than any diet. Instead of this bread, you use this bread, or instead of this snack food, you use this other snack food. And so once you get going and you find a few staples your child will like, then it's really no more difficult than any other diet. And as they feel better and they're more calm, they're more focused, your family is more, happy and calm, and you just have more space to do any little extra that you might need in order to get the diet, just to continue to maintain the diet. So I really have found that when I talk to parents, it's really only the beginning. So taking baby steps, maybe, starting with maybe these 10 or 11 or 12 recipes I'm suggesting at first, get them on hand. Just have your child eating some new things before you even take out the old things. And that can make a really big difference in making it easier for them to do.
Wonderful. And we've got a lot of people that are writing in questions here. I do want to say a couple of people one person in particular has written in and said, it isn't one size fits all. And I think we definitely want to acknowledge that yes. They themselves tried to cut dairy out, but they found that it had important nutrients for them and that they lost too much weight when they cut out cheese, and that it depends on the person. And for some of us, this is a benefit that when we cut out the dairy that we lose weight. So I just want to acknowledge that it's not a one size fits all, but many of us found that when, and there's lots of conflicting research about this, right? Mm-hmm. About the gluten-free, casein-free diet, because a lot of people will tell you that, it hasn't been found to be effective. But if you look at those studies, I have some issues with that because mm-hmm. our kids are not one size fits all.
Exactly.
I can only speak personally, and Nancy can speak for her case and in her household, but I'm somebody who happened to be allergic to dairy as a child mm-hmm. and became allergic to wheat as an adult. And then I had a child, and I had a child who was speaking and stopped speaking. And somebody said to me, well, maybe you should try to remove gluten. And because I was allergic to wheat, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what never heard that phrase before, didn't know what it was. And as they were explaining, and they were saying, oh, it's a wheat protein. I was like, wheat? Oh, I'm allergic to wheat. And then it was a week later that we found out about the dairy protein casein. And my son had an almost immediate beneficial reaction to a gluten-free, casein-free diet. And now he's 16, and every once in a while we'll do a challenge, and we have found that his body does not like it. And so we get a huge benefit. And I will be honest with you that my son went from having no language, that when we took out gluten and dairy, he started adding 5 words a day. That is not going to be everybody's experience. I want to be 100% honest here, but that is why I am so adamant about people should at least try it.
Right.
Because
one of the benefits, Shannon, I don't know if you also had behavioral benefits in addition to language.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wyatt stopped having his massive tantrums that he was having, like 5, 6, 7 tantrums a day to, a couple of tantrums every week. So he definitely lowered his anxiety, his ADHD lowered when we started the GFCF diet.
One of the things I tell people to go back and look at, you can find it online. Phil Donahue in 1984, folks, did a show on milk and milk allergies. And it's terrible. Nobody would ever do this again because it was terrible, but it changed the way a lot of us looked at dietary stuff. He had kids that were there who had been off of dairy for a while, and during a commercial break, they all drank milk. And by the end of the show, you could see how these kids were, and it was horrifying.
Wow.
Because for a kiddo who has a milk reaction, behavior, and it's almost instant. So anyway, we just want you, go ahead.
I just want to comment on the woman that was mentioning that's not one size fits all. I completely agree. I actually have an institute where I train practitioners called Bio-Individual Nutrition because of this very point. Because of course, everyone is unique. Everybody has unique life circumstances, unique genes, unique, everything. And therefore their diet needs to be customized, personalized to their unique needs. So there is not one diet that works for everybody. I would say though that gluten and dairy free is a typical good place for a lot of people to start. I actually have one family I know that absolutely benefits from dairy. So as you said, there are some families, but I don't run across it that often. But I usually take it a step further and say, okay, well, could you also have a challenge with grains or phenols or other things? And until you get the right kind of combination, you might not see all the benefits you're looking for. So I would agree that my message is always the diet needs to be customized to the individual.
Okay, can we address some of these questions that we're getting right now? Yes. Somebody wants to know, how do you know if your kid is sensitive to oxalates, histamine? Also, what is the best allergy test, IgG or IgE?
Okay, great questions. I'm writing them down. So, how do you know if your child, those are some of the other food compounds for people that are new. Histamine or amines are a type of compound. We think of histamine creating that allergy response, that very inflammatory response in things like aged meats and other, bone broths and things like that. And then oxalates being in compounds like nuts and other compounds like that. And so when the best way to know, sometimes it's symptoms, sometimes it's looking at, sometimes it's, there are some tests, but there are, usually I'll do a combination of lab tests and symptoms to really get a good idea if somebody might be reacting to a certain food. And then IgG versus IgE, well, it depends what someone has. An IgE reaction tests more allergies. So that's going to be peanut allergies or anaphylaxis type response, versus IgG is more of a food sensitivity, a delayed inflammatory response that creates more chronic inflammation, maybe constipation, congestion, things like that. Yeah, those are a couple of those. Hopefully that helps.
Okay. Nikki wants to know about refusals. She says that her son refuses to try anything new, that he had no language until 10 years old, and with lots of help, he is verbal, now 22 years old, but he is refusing new foods and is living on a very limited diet.
You know, it's tricky. I actually just saw a great story just the other day on, families are not able to get their child's favorite chicken nuggets or fast food or whatever it is. So this one mom got very creative, and she actually made herself a McDonald's French fry box and, all the different kind of wrappings, and made her own things and put them inside. And then the child ate them, and the child loved them and is really excited now. Now, that doesn't work for all kids, but is it brand specific? Is there a way that you could do something creative like that? Is it a matter of what is it in that food that they particularly like? Is it that it's more salty than the food you make at home? Maybe you can add more salt to it. Is it that they have MSG or other things that stimulate your brain and tell you this tastes good? You're probably not going to be able to mimic that too well, and you probably don't want to, because glutamate excites the brain, creates a lot of hyperactivity and an inability to calm one's self back down. So I would kind of look at what are the foods they like. Can you mimic that texture with something else? Let's say they like potato chips. Can you start making carrot chips or something else where just little by little you can take baby steps to expand their diet out?
Yeah, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to be very unpopular. And Nancy, you can chime in here too, that I think that we as parents get into routines, and we never want to shake our kids up too far. But the story that I always go back to is the mom who insisted and told me that, she had a child who would only eat one thing and only eat that thing ever. And then they went on vacation, and they were, someplace where there was a hurricane, and for 3 days they couldn't get access to that thing. And there was not even a question of it. They just couldn't get access. And her kid ate vegetables and ate all the other things. And she said, I don't understand. It was like a magic trick. We get a hurricane and he eats other things. And I don't think that it's one size fits all ever. It did remind me that part of it is, we put things in the house, and those are comfort things for us to give them, because food is love. Mm-hmm. Let's admit it. And it's the way that we show love to them. But if that thing isn't there, then it makes it infinitely easier. And we are in a circumstance right now where you can't necessarily get your hands on everything, and how, your kids might be experiencing some anxiety over that, but, are you able to get them to eat other things? I don't know, just throwing that out there. I like to be unpopular.
No, that's a great story to hear, because that is, I think it helps other people. So many times parents will say, well, their child doesn't eat any vegetables. They start going gluten and dairy free. Now their child eats more vegetables. Also, I completely agree. We do our best. We love our kids. I mean, it's in our nature to nurture them. So if that's give them whatever they're going to eat, of course, that's, that seems reasonable. But I bet you in part, this mom, she couldn't get it. So, because there's a little part in our brain, this is a story I like to tell about my husband. He's like a really crazy picky eater. Before we met, he ate like 10 foods. So I mean that with all sincerity. So when our baby was like 6 months old, maybe 8 months, whatever, I was on a call and I couldn't feed our daughter. So I said, okay, I made these fresh peas. I ground them up, feed these to her. Well, he didn't like peas. So I got done with the call and I said, how did it go? Did she eat the peas? And he said, nope, she would not eat those peas. And I said, what was wrong? Did they not taste good? Taste them. What do they taste like? He wouldn't. It turns out he didn't taste them because he thought they were gross. So he tried to feed them to her. She wouldn't eat them because she sensed on some level there's a danger here. This adult is not feeling comfortable. So there's a way that if we have, the more resolve and certainty and confidence we have with what we're feeding our child, it does, I believe it does translate to how accepting. And maybe in this mom's case, she was just like, oh my gosh, I can't get that food. So I've got to move forward with what we have. I don't know, maybe that translated to somehow for that child.
And this mom has written in a little bit more information. She said the diet he has is a variety of textures. So textures are okay, but he refuses new foods. And she's asking a very real question, and I really want to honor it, about what do you do if the food that's preferred isn't available and then he refuses to eat anything? Because the one thing that we don't ever want is a child who's failing to thrive or starving. No one wants that.
Absolutely. And I am always of, there's this rumor out there or whatever that I really dislike, which is that don't worry, eventually your kid will eat, they won't starve. Well, that's not always true in autism. They might not eat. And I mean, I don't want to put more fear. I mean, I'm all about nourishing hope, clearly. But I want to acknowledge this mother. As you said, there is a real fear and concern. And if a family, if that's all their child would eat, you do the best that you can do. What this mother's saying and what a lot of parents are telling me now is, but I can't get that food. So now what do you do? Now you have to do something if that food isn't available. And so that's why in the handout that I have when you register for the summit at nourishinghopesummit.com is if you can't get your chicken nuggets, try these gluten-free chicken nuggets. Every single recipe is 3 ingredients or less. So in this case, it's chicken, eggs, and any kind of gluten-free breading. Gluten-free flour, gluten-free crackers ground up, anything you can find. And most people can find chicken and eggs and some sort of rice flour or something. So that's one example. So I would say, if you can't find your favorite, I would say try to do your best with trying to create something as similar to what they like now as possible.
Yeah, wonderful. And Nancy, I'm not really letting you have a word in edgewise here, but there was a question asked early on about, can you talk a little bit about seizures? And I think that there is a nutritional component to this we're learning, correct?
Well, there could be some diets that could help. So, I don't think diets cause seizures, but for, I would say many decades, I'd say 70 years or more, I believe, we have known that the ketogenic diet has been used for intractable seizures. So we do know that's one thing. There's certain people that they can't cleanly burn glucose, and for whatever reason, that creates seizures for them. And if they eat a diet very high in fat and they're able to turn into fat burning instead of sugar burning, that does either resolve or improve their seizures. Now, again, everybody's unique. That one dietary approach does not work for everybody with seizures. I'm not one to say, what somebody should do definitively with a medical problem, but for people that are asking, there can be a biochemical component to these. So then the question is, well, what might be underlying it? And for some people, it might be that inability to break or to use sugars properly. For other people, it might be something else. There's a number of different clients I've had that have found different approaches to be helpful. So I would say in that case, it's tricky. Again, it's a medical issue. If you can get on a telemedicine call with hopefully your functional medicine or biomedical doctor and, kind of see which direction might be the best for you to go. Is it grain-free? Is it ketogenic? What might it be for that person?
Nancy, we've had success with the keto diet. My son had seizures and we put him on the keto diet. What do you think in general about the ketogenic diet? There's a lot of controversy about it.
There is. I love looking up the research on these things. In fact, we should at some point maybe talk about the research on GFCF because Shannon was saying, there's a lot of questions. There's tons of research on the GFCF, in fact, including a study that I was part of. So I'd love to talk about that. But for now, let's talk about ketogenic. There was a really cool study that was done, I'm going to say in the last year or two. It's on my website. If you go to nourishinghope.com, I did a whole write-up of the science. I spoke with the author. I took some of his data and made some new charts to make it easier to understand. The gist of it was they took a group of people with autism, half they put on the ketogenic diet, half they put on the GFCF diet. They both did well. They both improved. Different ones might have improved a little more on this diet. Other symptoms might have improved a little more on this diet. But they said kind of overall, the ketogenic diet might have even done a little bit better. Now, 30% of the people dropped out of the ketogenic diet because it's challenging. So my goal is always, well, what diet is doable and effective? So I like to start with the easiest, most simple things first, like a GFCF diet. If that doesn't work, maybe somebody will work their way up. But in this case, both diets were quite effective, and including the ketogenic diet. Now, it wasn't for seizures per se, but it was for people with autism.
Okay,
Wow.
great.
Interesting. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the GFCF research, because you know, it depends on who you're talking to. There are lots of, and I'll put my camera back on so you can see me talking. If you talk to people, some people in the world of ABA, they will tell you, oh, you know, there's no study showing that it does anything. But if you talk to anybody in the biomedical world, they're like, what are you talking about? There's 150 studies. And so it's very interesting to me who's looking at what study.
Yeah.
I just look at the study in my living room and I go, okay, I'm done.
Exactly.
But I am interested in hearing about the studies that are there. What do you have to say, Julie?
Yes, so there are lots of studies. There are studies looking at the opioids in the urine. So gluten and dairy, if they're not broken down properly by digestion, they can create these proteins that can leak into the bloodstream, and they can create they can fit in the opiate receptor like morphine does or heroin does, and they can create a lot of addictions to those foods and a lot of cognitive challenges, behavioral challenges, all sorts of things. There are a number of studies on that. Now, there are a couple studies saying, oh, well, that opiate thing, we can't replicate that. Well, there was another study that came out that said, well, in order to replicate it, you have to properly process that urine you're sending to the lab. It has to be, I think, kept really cold or something, or those compounds will degrade. So, you know, the studies that show they didn't find that, I'm wondering, could it have been that? Because there are a number of studies showing that for people with autism, they do have these opioid compounds specifically related to gluten and dairy in their urine in higher amounts. And we know in other studies that they can cross the blood-brain barrier and they can get in the opiate receptor. So that's one. We also know that people with issues with gluten and casein that have autism improve digestively. Their digestive symptoms improve when they're on a gluten and casein-free diet. There are studies that show that gluten and casein can be inflammatory for the digestive system. And a study that I was part of was published 2 years ago now. It was with Dr. Jim Adams, who is the lead, who is an amazing researcher and a father of an adult daughter with autism. I consider him a mentor. And we did a study looking at the gluten casein-free diet along with 5 other nutrition interventions, a multivitamin mineral formula, essential fatty acid, and so on. And we found 4.5 times the developmental age improvement. So, almost 7-point increase in IQ, and improvements in autism symptoms, anxiety, depression, irritability, the sociability, the list goes on and on. And so for that, what do I want to say about that? The developmental age. So, you know, it was a 1-year study, and you'd expect a neurotypical child to develop 1 year in 1 year. And you'd expect a delayed, you know, somewhat a developmental delay to develop less. So that seems normal. They developed the control group developed 4 months in the 12-month period. The group that got the interventions developed 18 months in that 12-month period. They developed 4.5 times as fast and started catching up to their peers in that they were beyond what you would expect developmentally in 12 months. So those are just some of the results from the combination of these approaches.
Somebody wants you to speak about the supplement study, the study you did with supplements.
Yes. So the supplements was part. So the supplements was part of that study. So we looked at a multivitamin mineral formula, essential fatty acid blend, digestive enzymes, carnitine, and Epsom salt baths. So people would soak in those. Parents found the thing, well, now the multivitamin mineral formula was added first and each thing was layered month after month. So the parents found the biggest benefit they felt with the multivitamin mineral formula. I am always curious, if we mixed those and moved them around, would they always get the best benefit with the first thing that we did? Or is it specifically that multivitamin? I do think a multivitamin mineral formula is very effective. Dr. Adams did a number of studies before this with this very multivitamin mineral formula, first taking the kids and just doing a nutritional workup on them, and then adding the supplement in. And he found improvements in the nutritional markers and the nutritional values and the markers associated with improved methylation and sulfation and things like that. So there are a number of studies looking at supplements.
Okay, but is this a point when we're talking about multivitamins where we should touch a little bit on the MTHFR? Because I know some people run out and get a multivitamin and it can actually be a multivitamin that has an ingredient that, come to find out 2 years down the road, their kid has tested positive for the MTHFR and that's not the right multivitamin for them. Do you want to talk at all about that?
Sure. So MTHFR is a gene that helps us to convert folate into the active form, this methylfolate that we need. We know a lot of people with autism have problems with methylation. In fact, a study done by Dr. Jill James showed that actually, there were a couple studies. She's done many studies. But one of the studies that was done was looking at these methylation markers. They looked at these very specific markers in total and found that when these collection of methylation markers were looked at, it had an 80-some% accuracy in determining autism. So they were almost, we see in autism, it's all subjective. Do you have these symptoms? We look for them, we mark them down. Are they severe enough? This was the first kind of quantitative thing saying we can almost predict autism based on these markers. Again, it's not diagnostic at this point, but it was so accurate. They thought, we're really onto something. These kids really have this methylation issue. And one of the methylation, important genes for methylation is MTHFR. And so we need to be able to convert the folate that comes in the form of folic acid that's fortified in our grains, that comes in a lot of multivitamin formulas, to the active form of methylfolate. And if we don't have proper MTHFR functioning, then we can't make that conversion. And without that, all of methylation can suffer. Also, like I said, they often have multiple methylation genes, so that can compound the challenge as well. And so getting good forms of folate in your food and getting a proper form of folate in your supplements, a folinic acid or a methylfolate, depending on who you are, can make a really important difference.
Julie, you have a 2-minute clip that you gave us, but I don't know, we have more questions too. I don't know how much of it you've already covered than the clip. Should we show the clip? Should we keep with the questions? What do you think? What would you like to do? And we've got time to do both.
It doesn't matter to me. I've never, you can ask my husband, I hate video. It's totally, and so I never even really watch most of my video clips. So, we could go.
Well, let's give you a break. Let's give you a break. You rest for a second. It's only 2 minutes long. Okay, let's take a look at the clip. Then we're going to come back and ask some more questions.
Okay.
So take a look, you guys. This is Julie Matthews, Nourishing Hope. Register for that webinar right now.
So this is happening. Certainly there are things we can do for prevention in the future, but because this epidemic is upon us now, what would be the top 3 things you would recommend for creating a better life for people with autism?
I would look at diet number one, and I would start with something simple that everyone can do, which is take out artificial ingredients. Artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, MSG, all of that. It's a really easy way, but we can see dramatic improvement with our children with ADHD or autism or any of them. And then looking at taking out the inflammatory foods. For children with autism, it's often gluten and dairy. Can be very inflammatory. That creates an inability to digest them, and they actually end up with opiates like morphine or heroin that are floating around that can fit in the opiate receptor and trigger a very similar brain chemical response. So getting out the inflammatory foods or the foods that are causing neurological challenges, and then adding good healthy nutrition in, because a lot of them have underlying, let's say, methylation issues or things that require good folate. So just even simple things like getting good vegetables into your kids. I know that can be challenging with autism. Particularly, we know that they are known to be picky eaters, and there's a number of reasons for that. But I really like to encourage parents not to despair and to keep going, because you can get really creative with texture and you can start to make vegetables. I just had a client the other day in this program that I'm doing, and she wrote back, the mom wrote back and said, you know, my child is eating vegetables for the first time. And they're not earth-shattering ideas, but they are creative ideas that I think a lot of parents sometimes get stuck. So if we can just make healthy foods more kid-friendly, then we can start to get them to eat healthier.
Well, where can we go to see some examples of that? Because that does seem like a simple thing that we can do right away that can change the lives of our little ones.
Absolutely. So they can find more information. My book's called Nourishing Hope for Autism, and I have a website, nourishinghope.com. And there's all sorts of helpful information, recipes, and things to help parents get started.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for giving so much hope to so many. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't know if I've ever heard the better name of a website in my life, nourishinghope.com, because nourishing our bodies, nourishing our souls, nourishing our children, is there any better way to live better? Thank you for your courage to nourish yourself, to nourish your little ones, to nourish the world, and to continue on this journey.
Wonderful. And so for people who have joined us late, you're getting ready to have this ginormous summit. Tell us again when it is and what the details are so that they can start to register.
Yes, so it's nourishinghhopesummit.com, and it is going to be April 20th through the 26th, and it is going to be free. There's 35 interviews. We have Dr. Adams talking about the study that we were a part of. We have Dr. Martha Herbert talking. She's a pediatric neurologist. We've got from Harvard. We've got all sorts of people talking about how to cook in your kitchen, creative ideas for picky eaters. We've got a whole picky eater section. We've got more advanced diets. We're going to talk about ketogenic diet with an expert, a PhD who started studying ketogenic diet for divers in the Navy who had gotten brain injuries. The list goes on and on. Really exciting topics. So they can go there, register for free. As I was saying, turns out that I guess those 3 tips I guess I was right on point. It's funny that I had the same tips today that I did then, but I guess, they are obviously 3 very important points. But yeah, they can go there and they'll get the handout, 3 ingredient recipes that you can make at home right now that you probably have in your refrigerator or that you can get at the store. On the form there, or on the handout, there's a little short grocery list of 20 items that are the recipes, carrots, chicken, eggs, kale, just simple things. And most of the grocery stores do have those in stock. So a great way for people to get started with some really healthy things. And as I was, the one thing that from the clip was the kid-friendly component. That is something we only talked a little about today that I think is really important because there was a study done, I briefly mentioned in the clip, on picky eaters. And autism, there are some, not only are they picky eaters, I think, I forget all the stats right now, but they also had 3 or more picky eating behaviors, including 2 that only existed in the autism group, which was pica, which is eating non-food items, and pocketing food, which is, not swallowing it. So we know they have very specific eating needs and habits. They have sensory issues. So if you're not tasting the food very well, because maybe you're zinc deficient, and you've got texture issues, eating like slimy, like kale is going to be highly offensive. So let's make kale chips, crispy, crunchy, salty. Rarely do I have a child that I found that doesn't like them. But again, just sometimes it's simple things that parents just aren't aware of. So I really like to look at that. So, and then when you also register, there's 2 more guides, and one of them are kid-friendly recipes, and there's more recipes there. And then I also have a 12-step guide that comes from my program. I give you all the steps for free, all 12 steps, baby steps through advanced steps, on how to eat a healthy diet and how to make it kid-friendly, and then how to advance it with some of these other concepts.
And all of this is free when you register for the summit, and the summit is free also, Julie?
Absolutely, it's all free.
So you really can't go wrong, you guys. And the place that they want to go to register for the summit is?
NourishingHopeSummit.com.
Okay. Now, many of you are writing in and saying, well, can I have the link to this study that she was talking about? Can I have the link to that study that she's talking about? Go to nourishinghope.com so that you can get all the information that Julie has, and you can be having a conversation with Julie, because we would be posting things all day long. Somebody else wants to know, we've tried to give our son supplements to support his methylation pathway, but he has a corn intolerance and had a negative reaction, behavior and mood, to a supplement. Our naturopath prescribed pure encapsulations. Can you recommend a clean brand for someone with a corn allergy? And maybe that's a question they need to ask you, because I bet you have more questions for them.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes it's hard for me to fully answer a question. What was the supplement? What were you looking for? But a lot of times vitamin C is derived from corn. So there are some people that might react. I've had some clients very sensitive. And so they would need to find a brand that didn't have any of the ingredients derived from corn. So, yeah.
Okay. Nancy, I feel bad. I'm not letting you squeeze in. You jump in if you have a question for Julie, okay?
Okay, I will. One of the things, though, we were talking about getting kids to eat non-preferred foods, what you can do, which is based in ABA, what my therapists have done, is you give them the non-preferred food, but follow it up with the preferred food. So you introduce tiny, tiny amounts. Is that something that you recommend, Julie?
I think anytime you can expose a child to a new food is a good thing. So if I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, let's give them a cookie before we give them, something healthy. But if they're not going to eat the healthy thing, and the first way we can even get them to eat the healthy thing is to do some sort of a reward in the short term, but now they get exposure to it over and over, and they're probably eating the preferred food to begin with anyway, then I do think that that's a fine strategy for the short term. Anything we can do to expand their mind to the fact that these aren't scary and that they ate them and they liked them, I think can be a positive thing. Now, there might be better ways to do it. I mean, I'd rather not give the preferred food if it's not an ideal food. But like I said, if they're already eating it anyway, it'll give you some leverage. And right. I feel like, and sometimes kids just need to get over the fear of the food by being exposed to it.
Yeah. Julie, I'm a big fan of sneaking things into things and not telling people. And I always say to people, I admit that my son is not a picky eater. I don't know how I lucked out in that lottery, but I lucked out in that lottery. He's epicurious. It is my husband. You talked about your husband only having 10 foods. I think my husband could beat your husband. And my husband had not seen a vegetable up close for at least 10 years before we started dating. And I started sneaking things into, like, the meatloaf. I sneak broccoli and carrots into the meatloaf instead of the bread and the cheese and the egg. And I swear, to this day, I don't think he realizes. He's like, this is the best meatloaf ever. And it has none of the bad stuff and all of the good stuff. And he ends up getting like 2 servings of vegetables. This is my husband, you guys.
I understand.
Right? Are you a fan of sneaking things in when it's our kids, or do you think it pulls them further away from understanding what they're eating?
I think it could be either way, and I think you need to understand your child in order for this strategy. I love those ideas. I love sneaking things in because sometimes, I don't know, kids, they just, they don't want it, but if it's there, they don't really mind. The one challenge that I would caution some parents is super picky eaters. If they only eat, let's say, 2 proteins, let's say they eat meatballs and something else, and now you've messed with their meatballs and now they reject the meatballs and you only got 1 food left, or that's a little dangerous per se.
Okay, be careful.
So I would say it's all about knowing your child. With that said, I would say a vast majority of my clients sneak healthy things in because their kid doesn't mind, their kid doesn't notice it, they get more nutrition in, just like you said. So for the most of the time, I think it's a great strategy. It's just you really need to know your child to know that, because what we want to do is we never want to lose trust with our child around feeding them, because it can be difficult to get that back.
Okay with my husband, but not so much with our
That's
kids.
right, exactly.
I love it. I want to make sure before we run out of time, because we're down to the last 4 minutes here, that we tell people again, there is this summit, and tell them the dates again, Julie.
The summit is April 20th through the 26th. And so that whole week, starting on Monday, there'll be talks every day, and they can go to nourishinghopesummit.com to register for free.
Okay, and is it a certain time each day? And tell us about that.
During each 24-hour period, they will have access to any or all of the interviews that day. So if there's specific ones on that day, they can listen to those whenever they want to.
Wonderful. So you can do it on your own schedule, but you got to make sure that you look at the calendar and go, okay, I've got 24 hours. I want to see this interview with this person. I've got 24 hours. I'm going to fit it in where I can do it.
Exactly.
That's very clever, Julie. That's very smart of you.
Thanks. I mean, I like to make things as easy for people to be able to make use of them as possible. So I want to make it accessible for people, and also put it in an order that they can wrap they can make good use of that learning. And if they go to the summit page, nourishinghopesummit.com, they'll see all the days and all the speakers, so they can plan it out ahead of time. If they know they've only got limited time, they can mark their calendar now with the ones they really want to see. And if they say, I really love these, I can't see them all right now, or whatever it is, there is an opportunity to buy them and then own them for a lifetime. So you can go back to them as many times as you want. And so I wanted to really make it accessible. I know that during this time, people might not have a lot of extra funds. And if they don't, I want to make everything available for them for free. I want parents, obviously I want kids to get better and feel better. And I want to support parents during this difficult time as much as possible.
Well, that is awesome. So you have nothing to lose. Go and register. Then you'll get the recipes. You're going to get those 3 handouts, and you'll be registered, and you can see them on your own time within those 24-hour periods. And if you need more, there is more. In fact, if you need more from Julie, Julie has other services too. You take clients on to help with more, entrenched issues, and she is available to do that all through nourishinghope.com. Nancy, we love her, don't we?
We do. You're just a wealth of knowledge, Julie. And it's so nice to know that these are simple things you can do to make a difference in your child's life. It's very empowering.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Yes, trying just a simple thing or two. Just start wherever you are and see. Baby steps, little steps, step by step can really make a big difference. You don't have to do it all overnight. You can just start incorporating a few healthy things, the few healthy gluten-free things, and then before you know it, little by little. So I just want to encourage families to, stick with it.
Wonderful.